let's just start by talking about like Midnight Cowboy. And you mentioned this as like one of your references, which you've never talked to me about before. So what is this movie about? So, well, I guess I'll give a little bit of an overview first, and you can riff on it a little bit.
Sure.
So Midnight Cowboy is a 1969 American drama film directed by John Schlesinger, which I thought was interesting. Adapted by Waldo Salt from the 1965 novel by James Leo Herlihy?
Yeah, Herlihy.
The film stars Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight, with supporting roles played by Sylvia Miles, John McIver, Brendan Vaccaro, Bob Balaban, Jennifer Salt, and Bernard Hughes. Set in New York City, Midnight Cowboy depicts the unlikely friendship between two hustlers, naive prostitute Joe Buck Voight and ailing conman Rico Rizzo, referred to as Ratso. Wow.
Ratso Rizzo.
Ratso Rizzo.
Yeah.
So what is it about this movie that's interesting?
Well, I think the experience is what I'd like to talk about. It was, in the late '60s, and it was playing in downtown Chicago, and I didn't know anything about the film, but I had seen Dustin Hoffman before, so I thought I would give it a shot. So it was at a time where downtown Chicago was very dangerous, and I was driving my dad's Chrysler 300. It was like a 19-year-old or something like that, and I was really nervous driving downtown because anything could happen. And also, that's when the mini skirt came into fashion, and my date, who became my girlfriend, was wearing like a kind of a thigh-length mini skirt, which wouldn't be a big deal today, but at that, in those days, it was like the dresses and skirts, they would go down like to above the knee. So I had that, that kind of adrenaline rush on, safety and as well as, my runaway hormones.
Yeah, totally.
So we went to see the movie, and when I came out, I was in an altered state, which I don't know if I could even describe it then, what it was, a lucid altered state. And as I walked outside of the movie theater, what seemed like a very dangerous place suddenly was just illuminated. It was like the street lights. This is when there were chrome bumpers. The street lights were reflecting off the bumpers. So it was an incredible lucid high. And at that point in my life, I was planning to go to medical school, but the experience I had watching Midnight Cowboy just shifted everything, because there was a part of me that felt like, I don't know how, because I wasn't a writer. My 7th grade teacher told me I was functionally illiterate. But I wanted to somehow participate in creating this experience for people, even though I didn't know how to describe what had happened. And do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
So every time I heard the Nilsson soundtrack music, everybody's talking, I would have what I now call a bodily felt experience, a kinesthetic experience. So there was something that was going on in what now I call like the relational field of resonance between Waldo Salt, who wrote it, and John Schlesinger, who directed it, the kind of story maestros, the film that was made, and me and the rest of the audience. There was that I couldn't explain then at all, but there was literally a field of resonance, and it was a field of healing resonance. And I didn't know why. 15 years later, I was giving seminars at the Mill Valley Film Festival, and they brought in the writer Waldo Salt, and they showed the movie. Now, I hadn't seen it for 15 years, and it blew me away again. I was just like swept away, and it's a very dark movie in parts. I don't think they would be able to release it with what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the gift was I got to hang out with Waldo Salt. Now, here's this guy who's, he would say, when I was asking about screenwriting, he would say, I've made films. I've written films that have won Academy Awards, and I've also written some of the worst films that were ever made in film history. And he always liked to point out Taurus Bulba with Yul Brynner was one of
What's
his.
that one?
Taurus Bulba. You can check it out. I think it was made into a musical.
Is this it? No.
No, that's Taurus Bulba. There it is, Taurus. No, wait.
Down here. This.
Yeah.
It's a American historical adventure drama film based on Nikolai Gogol's Taurus Bulba, starring Tony Curtis. The film was directed by J. Lee Thompson. That's not it, right?
That's it. That's
Is
it.
it?
Yeah.
And what is this?
Well, I'm not even sure what the story was, but it was
Waldo Salt.
It was Waldo Salt wrote it, and
Yeah.
it was one of his films that was a flop. But what he went on to say was, no matter how successful the film from his screenplay was, or how unsuccessful it was, there was one kind of key element that was in every script that he wrote. Now, this was in the context of this big film festival where producers and writers and directors were fighting about the idea of what is a through line, how do you structure, all that kind of stuff. And Sid Field was there, but, the writer-directors said, we don't follow any of that stuff. It was a pretty intense conversation. So they called Waldo and I up in front of the group, and I just said, Waldo, how do you find the through line to your scripts? And he was just saying with the 30 or 40 scripts that I wrote, in each one of them, what the character wants is in opposition to what he needs to learn. So like the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want, but if you try some time, you might find you get what you need. So this became a model that I've used ever since, and my colleague Keith Cunningham and I have really developed just called the need versus mode model. And we pretty much find, this is really kind of at the core of great storytelling, to be clear on what this is, because it becomes what's called the character's dilemma. So in Midnight Cowboy, because I got a chance to see it again and went through the same experience and was hanging out with Waldo, who kind of was, from all of his years, he had been through alcoholism and divorce from the family. He was actually kind of almost living like
The filmmaker.
like Razzo Rizzo, the character. Yeah.
The filmmaker was.
Yeah. The Waldo who wrote
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, the writer.
Yeah, the writer. Yeah. So this was really kind of the source of virtually all the work I've done in the last 45 years internationally. This film was the inciting incident. This film was the inciting incident, and for example, prior to meeting Waldo Salt, I had written two screenplays. I'd optioned two screenplays that I thought was going to get made because there were stars like Warren Beatty and Steve McQueen and Clint Eastwood involved in all that, and nothing happened. And I moved back to Chicago to write another screenplay, and I had to make money fast. And a friend of mine was a general manager at a downtown Marriott hotel. So when I was living in LA, for some reason, we all dressed up like cowboys, like with vintage cowboy wear and, cowboy boots and so on. The closest I had been to horses was at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, being chased by horses, but we looked like cowboys.
Yeah.
So then, I went from a kind of hip cowboy to this bellman, where when I would get to work, we would go down like 3 flights into the basement and put on our orange and brown polyester uniforms to come up and then start to take people's luggage up to their room. I'm bringing this out because one of the key, and I think it's maybe called the threshold crossing in Midnight Cowboy, Joe Buck, who has decided that he wants to be a gigolo because women pay a lot of money to handsome men like him. He had this fixation on being a cowboy. Gets to New York, he goes up to his hotel room. He doesn't know anything about tipping or anything like that. And he comes up and, so he's standing here and then the bellman is standing here. waiting for his tip. And there's like, freeze frame photos of this where I realized it was two sides of my own persona. I was the fake cowboy, and I was also now the bellman. So so the film had such an impact on me that there were things actually happening synchronistically in my life that were kind of reflecting all of that.
What do you think it was when you saw that? When you saw the movie, you mentioned like the environment, like you perceived the environment that you were going into downtown Chicago in like a specific way.
Yeah.
And then you go see the movie, and then you come out, and now you're perceiving that environment differently. So what is that? Like, why do you think that happened? And like, what is that?
Well, it's the foundation of I would say all of my work. And what it has to do, as best as I can explain it, is that when there is this field of resonance between the storyteller, the story, and the audience.
Field of resonance means like some kind of connection. There's some kind of connective thing happening between the filmmakers who are telling the story and the actors in the story and the audience that's experiencing it.
That's exactly it. And in fact, they're on parallel emotional journeys.
Right.
And after many years of reflecting on it, that parallel emotional journey from a Midnight Cowboy was a bodily felt experience. It wasn't I wasn't analyzing it. It was something that was in the depths and wisdom of my body, or some people call it body mind. So that was it. I wasn't able to articulate that, but as the years went on, and as a bellman, I was invited to a lecture by a friend I had made there who was at the University of Chicago, and he said, "I think you like storytelling. I think you'll like this guy." And it was Joseph Campbell.
Oh, crazy!
Yeah,
you met him?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and worked with him. I mean, studied
crazy.
under him.
Yeah.
I would say.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So these are the hills and valleys
Totally.
that characters go on, and in order to write authentic characters, it's something that we as writers, need to experience, I would say.
There's this thing that I've noticed when I experience something like really, really good, I guess is the word for it, in whatever medium, where I feel like it points to something.
Yeah.
Like it points to something universal. You see it sometimes with like music. Like some music just hits.
Yeah.
It's like just configured correctly or something. Yeah. There's a lot of things like that, like where they have to be just right. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And it's like, whether it's like music or like a software or like a film or like a particular dish that you're making.
Yeah.
Like if you overextend, it like fucks it up. And then, but if you have to find this weird balance, where it's just like right, and it's interesting. It's like when you're working on things, sometimes you think you're designing them in a particular way. You think you're designing them, but I find it's more about trying to get the thing configured in a way where it points to something universal. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Totally.
It's like you just got to connect in some way. What the weird thing about it is that you can create something that serves as like a bridge to this connective feeling. Let's say in the case of a film, let's say between the piece of media and then the audience that's experiencing it. You can create a bridge that points to a particular emotion, right? You can take them there as like the characters experience specific things, however you edit it, however you shoot it, the colors, the art direction, all that stuff. But you can't actually design the connective resonance, if you will. It doesn't feel like that's that it doesn't feel like that's within the scope of tools that you have. You can only take people there. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, and I would say that you have to go on the journey yourself.
Yeah.
And that means when you're faced with fear and uncertainty, you need to be able to kind of stay with that, with the understanding that this is what the audience will more than likely be experiencing too. A character leaves their comfort zone and goes into an unknown world. Well, right away, that is going to engage the audience because they know what that's like, and they know how many people will resist going into a new situation.
To
like
be
that.
nervous.
Yeah.
Wonder what's going to happen.
Now, when you saw the movie, was it called Moonlight that won the...
Yeah.
Yeah. What was because I remember you had a powerful experience. Could you articulate kind of what that was?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen it. I just watched Sinners as well.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen that?
No.
It's good. I think.
Oh,
like,
what I did see. Yeah, that's
I watched
the horror film.
Yeah, I watched it last night. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But with this one, I thought the transformation of the character was very interesting. I think that in this case, you remember this film?
Yeah.
So he's kind of like wrestling with his like sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think his father or something, or like some figure was like a really like strong, confident kind of like gangster drug dealer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as he ages, right, he goes and becomes this really tough person. I don't know. I just thought the acting and everything was really cool. I thought the different choices that he had to make at every time. I don't know. It was shot very well. I loved this. I love this shot here down here where I got to watch it again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I do also. I just remember afterwards you had said something,
It hit me hard.
It hit you hard, and it was like, this is how films can be made in a way that they're, that I want to be like this. I want to be able to create these kind of stories.
Totally, yeah. I think that in general, for me, I find it can be hard for me to watch movies.
Yeah.
When I was like first starting out, like making videos and stuff, I would like meet people who would like watch so many different films.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was like a really important aspect of their identity.
Yeah.
That they had seen these films and they could like quickly reference things.
Yeah.
And for me, like I want to watch films too, but I find like it's such a heavy experience for me to watch it.
Yeah.
I felt that was like kind of like an unrelatable thing when I was like among some of my friends, because they're just like watching like 15 movies a week. And it's like, it's hard for me to do that because I just sit with it. It really, really, really affects me. I'm very sensitive to it. Yeah. And so when I watch a movie, when I watch a movie, it just really sits with me. I just think that life is so cool.
Say more about that.
Like, I just think that it's just really amazing that we're all here together and we all go through these like transformative experiences, where we lose ourselves, we try to be different people, we have to like discover who we are, we have to accept the realities of the world, we have to figure out how to navigate both our skills and the demons that come with those skills.
Yes.
And I just think it's very interesting, and I think it's pretty amazing, and like it's a lot that a film can capture that. I still kind of don't understand what storytelling is. You know what I mean? Like this idea that you can structure things, and like the idea that there's these patterns, and when you follow these patterns, or it's just so odd to me. It's hard for me to accept it as a real thing, but I know it is. It's like, you know, like in the sense that there are films that I've seen that when I watch them, they connect with me on a very deep and visceral level. Mm-hmm. They bring in emotions, and they allow me to perceive certain situations in my life that I had not perceived in that same way. Mm-hmm. They create new connections in my mind. They alter me in some deep, like fundamental way. Mm-hmm. It's so, in a way, it's so magical. But that it's almost hard for me to believe that it's real. I have difficulty processing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. And, also, I was like coming of age and getting more and more involved with films, during the renaissance of films, like in the late 60s and 70s. I mean, it was like one magnificent story after the next, from The Godfathers to, there was a number of movies around Midnight Cowboy. One was called Charlie, one was called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And literally, I think what was happening for me is that I was experiencing my heart opening for the first time and watching these movies. Now, cut to some decades later, I can't find movies that I really want to watch or go to. There was one, I think, out last year called Past Lives, which is a beautiful poem.
What's that about?
It's about two best friends growing up who are separated, kind of going their own ways, but there's always this kind of powerful attraction between the two of them because they were like soulmates as kids. And I don't want to give anything away, but it's kind of like what happens.
I heard about this film.
It's so beautiful.
I heard it's like ridiculously good.
Well, on many, yeah, because it reminds me of these films, these films that have that depth of emotion. But I'd love for you to see it so we can talk about it. Or we can even watch it together because it's really a beautiful film, and so now decades later after these great movies. It's hard to find something to really go out and it's like Pauline Kael had one book, I Lost It at the Movies. Like I'm not able to lose it at the movies anymore. And that's, in some ways it's disappointing, but in other ways it's kind of like, oh, well, now's not the time to get lost in movies. Mm-hmm. Now's not the time to escape into movies because you need to create your own.
What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that it's like it's the in an exaggerated sense, movies could be like a drug where you can like go on a trip, and it's not always a great trip, but you really you leave the reality you're in, and you lose time and space, and you have 2 hours or however it is if you're in the movie to kind of get lost, and then you come out, and I would feel refreshed and also inspired.
Totally.
Yeah. So. That's kind of what I mean. It's like we don't have the same, I don't have the same pleasant distractions that I had in the earlier years. And I think that's good because it's kind of like, I don't have a desire to listen to the news. Yeah. I don't know why, I don't remember when satire was brought in as a form of journalism, but so it's kind of like, and this discussion goes on and on about people looking at their screens all the time and what that means and so on and so forth. But it all gets back to what's been at the core of my work is that it's called I just call it a kinesthetic experience, like what's going on in your body wisdom. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, Vin, the real key that I've found over these years really has to do with change begins when we start to perceive and respond to the world in a different way. And it's very appropriate today, and we'll talk about story constellations, we'll talk about the heroine's journey.
But what do you mean by that? About what matters right now is how you respond and perceive. How
you perceive the world and respond to the world.
So why is that important?
Well, it's important because I would say that perhaps the major dis-ease on the planet right now is that billions of people are seeing the world through a binary lens, through a dualistic lens, good versus bad. And that's one way that colonialists will conquer people to set them against each other, but that's not the way the world functions. And so if you think about, the changes that have happened in quantum physics and how spirituality and quantum physics have come together. So rather than me kind of getting caught on some new thing that comes out about Trump and Jeffrey Epstein or something like that, that feeling experience in the body is not a pleasant one, and it's not a grounded one either. So, the idea is, and it takes a lot of courage, and a lot of it comes from the teachings of Jesus that it seems like very few people are actually following in my country and in the U.S. But that change comes from when you are in a situation and then you realize you want to win or you want to fight back, or it's this kind of dualistic situation that for me now, that when I become aware of that, I relax, I breathe, I go into my body, and I look at the quantum view of what's happening.
And what's the quantum view?
So it's, for example, you and I are sitting here and having a nice convo.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to see you, by the
Yeah,
way.
it's
Really,
good seeing you too, man.
You're one of my favorite humans.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, really. I was excited about coming here, and Sunday feels the same way too.
Appreciate that.
She's
man.
like, that guy's got depth and heart. And
Thanks. Man.
yeah, yeah. So
The quantum view.
yeah. So this, in a sense, I guess the simple and the clearest way I could express it is that you and I are here right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of Vin and Tom.
Yeah.
And so I have a certain agenda, maybe around who I think I am,
Mm-hmm.
that comes up. You know, that every human has these kind of like self-talk and things like that. You may have a conception of who you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question really is, what if we're actually not who we think we are? What if we're what we hold between ourselves and each other?
Mm-hmm.
It's a field of resonance. We can feel it now, because if we were sitting here alone, it would be a totally different experience.
Totally.
So what that opens up is that the duality of me versus you doesn't actually exist when you relax into the quantum view of it, that the physicist David Bohm and his many conversations with Krishnamurti really pointed out. So when I talk about a field of resonance, because I'm still searching for the right words, I'm really kind of talking about the idea that what if we're not stars? What if we're constellations?
Mm-hmm.
And then from Native American tradition, they might say, and each star is a story, and the star chooses us to tell that story.
What's this? This is quantum mysticism.
Oh, that looks good.
Quantum mysticism, sometimes referred to pejoratively as quantum quackery or quantum woo, is a set of sorry, Tom.
No, it's all right.
Is a set of metaphysical beliefs and associated practices that seek to relate spirituality or mystical worldviews to the ideas of quantum mechanics and its interpretations. Quantum mechanics is considered pseudoscience and quackery by quantum mechanics experts. Before the 1970s, the term was usually used in reference to the postulation that consciousness causes collapse, but was later more closely associated with purportedly pseudoscientific views espoused by New Age thinkers such as Fritjof Capra and other members of the fundamental physics group history. In New Age thought, if we go down.
Do you know the David Bohm documentary that was made?
No, let's pull it up.
Because that will help. The problem here,
Yeah,
in that article,
yeah, quantum mysticism.
yeah, is because they're talking about the duality of science and not science,
Yeah,
science and not science, and that, for me, that's not a way to explore things.
yeah,
Because like I have friends who are neuroscientists, and someone will say something or I'll say something, and they say, well, that's not science.
yeah,
That's so broad.
totally.
Yeah, so let's see what they have to say about
Is
the
this
film
it?
here. Yeah,
This is Krishnamurti.
Krishnamurti and David Bohm. It's a fascinating
This one.
documentary. Yeah, Infinite Potential.
So about the film. Let's see.
He was one of the 20th century's most brilliant physicists. Albert Einstein called him his spiritual son. The Dalai Lama relied upon him as his science guru. So why is it that hardly any of us know the name David Bohm?
Yeah.
Question begins the quest to tell the story.
Is there a clip of this film we can watch?
I hope so. There should be.
Is this the full movie?
It's 2:29, so
Okay, no. Is it called Infinite Potential?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, Robbie, can you look up the quantum potential on this David Bohm character? Like, let's see David Bohm's Wikipedia page, too. Super interesting. Does he have a Wikipedia page? Okay, let's see who this guy is. David Joseph Bohm was an American scientist who has been described as the most significant theoretical physicist of the 20th century, and who contributed unorthodox ideas to quantum theory, neuropsychology, and the philosophy of mind. Among his many contributions to physics is his casual and deterministic approach of quantum theory, known as de Broglie-Bohm theory. Have you heard of this, Robbie?
I know of him, but...
You know of him?
Yeah.
Bohm advanced the view that quantum physics meant that the old Cartesian model of reality, that there are two kinds of substances, the metal and the physical, that somehow interact, was too limited. To complement it, he developed a mathematical and physical theory of implicate and explicit order. He also believed that the brain, at the cellular level, works according to mathematics of some quantum effects, and postulated that thought is distributed and non-localized just as quantum entities are. Bohm's main concern was with understanding the nature of reality in general, and of consciousness in particular as a coherent whole, which according to Bohm is never static or complete. It's really crazy to try to map out something like that mathematically.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nuts. What's the quantum? Oh, yeah. What's this?
So bridging science and spirituality, this would be kind of a counterpoint to that first article that you read about all the woo-woo.
Yeah. Well, it seems like he was a very respected person.
Well, he got thrown out of most of the, Harvard-like universities because he wouldn't go along with Oppenheimer's theory.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a result of that, he's definitely on a great hero's journey.
Yeah.
Because he's facing adversaries, but the adversaries are representing the status quo world, and he's going into the unknown. One of the fascinating things about the story is that after decades of his brilliance and not being seen, and I think there was also some anti-Semitism that was involved in all of that, that with that, going through all of that, he was in a library, and his wife was with him, and his wife was, in a sense, guided to this book by Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
And she started reading it, and she basically just said, you have to read this. And it became like a lifelong partnership discussing physics and spirituality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. It says that here he wrote a book decided to write a textbook called Quantum Theory. I don't understand the basics of quantum mechanics and quantum theory. I feel like in order to understand this, I need to know some of the basics.
Let's dive in.
Yeah. Just what are some of the basics of quantum theory and quantum mechanics? Sure. Do you know this stuff, Robbie?
Very basic. Not much.
Quantum physics describes the bizarre behavior of matter and energy at the smallest scale, atoms, electrons, and photons. Here are the core principles that make it so different from everyday physics. Wave-particle duality. Everything at quantum scales acts as both a wave and a particle simultaneously. An electron isn't just a tiny ball orbiting an atom. It's also a wave spreading out in space. Light behaves as both electromagnetic waves and discrete packets called photons. The duality is fundamental to quantum reality. Quantization. Energy, angular momentum, and other properties come in discrete chunks or quanta rather than continuous amounts. Electrons and atoms can only exist at specific energy levels. They can jump between levels but never exist in between. That's why we call it quantum physics. Let's see that again. Electrons in atoms can only exist at specific energy levels. They can jump between levels but never exist in between. Wow. Uncertainty principle. You cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and momentum of a particle without perfect precision. The more precisely you measure one, the less precisely you can know the other. Explain Lickum 5. Why is it so different from classic physics? Imagine you've been playing with regular sized balls your whole life. You roll them, they go in straight lines, you can see exactly where they are and how fast they're moving. This is like classical physics. Everything behaves predictably. But then you discover tiny invisible balls that act completely crazy. Sometimes they act like balls, sometimes they act like waves on water. You can watch where they go without changing how they move. They can be in multiple places at once until you look at them. This is quantum physics. Classical physics works great for big things, cars, planets, baseballs. But at the tiny scale of the atoms, the rules completely change. It's like discovering that when you shrink down to really small gravity suddenly works backwards and you can walk through walls. The key difference in our everyday world, things have definite properties. A car is either moving or stopped, either here or there. But quantum particles exist in a fuzzy, uncertain state where they can be multiple things simultaneously until you measure them. Wow, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I could see why something like that would get like a lot of backlash, right? Because because like you have these like broad strokes, the classical physics is something you can totally like see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're talking about something you can't see,
right?
So now we're at this point here. What is the relation between quantum physics and consciousness?
Oh, this would be a good one.
This is one of the most hotly debated and speculative areas where physics meets philosophy and neuroscience. There are several proposed connections, but it's important to understand that most are highly controversial and far from settled science. It makes sense because now it's like people are talking about the way they're feeling and they're trying to map it back against this, these proofs, right? These scientific proofs, if you will. But let's go back. Let's just see. Some interpretation of quantum mechanics involve consciousness and how quantum systems collapse. Have you heard of that before, Tom? The collapse?
I've heard it, but I can articulate more about the spiritual aspect of it than the actual physics aspect of it. Yeah. But when you listen to the conversations between David Bohm and Krishnamurti, for example, then they understand perfectly.
Do you have a clip
other.
of that, Robbie? A conversation between David Bohm and Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti is interesting. I haven't dove into his work that much. A little bit. I think if you just go to YouTube. Yeah, there. This one? Top link, YouTube. Yeah. This is the whole thing. Holy shit. Wow. Are there chapters? Yeah, go to this one. Brockwood Park. Where is that? Can you turn it up a bit? You know who this guy is, Robbie?
No.
Turn it up.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's like it's like they're trying to process what creates transformation. That's what they're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out, like, why do people transform? And why is it that when they experience specific things, they transform? And is there any does that process of transformation show up in any other way? Because, like, we have these ideas of, like, what science is and what science is not. And these are, like, labels that we, like, put on things, right? Mm-hmm. And it can be limiting in a way to, like, look at things through those labels when you're trying to process something like this that is, like, feels new and doesn't really have, like, an existing label, right? But it's very obvious, like, what happens. Like, you watch a particular film, you listen to, like, a particular song, you go through an experience in your life. Maybe you go on have, like, a trip or something. It's very obvious that you're, like, transforming. And is this transformation a universal thing? Is it something that, like, keeps showing up? Why is it that when we watch a particular film, why is it that when a song comes out at a particular time or someone takes a particular action at a specific time, that it has meaning? Like, why, how is that possible? How could something have meaning in a way where, like, millions of people can understand what it means? Like, in this shared understanding, like, how is that possible? Right. And so it's kind of like my interpretation of that, like, mm-hmm. little clip is that it's these two individuals that are trying to reconcile what exactly that is. And it's blending these two concepts. Like, can we take what we're experiencing and have experienced in life? Can we map it back against some other kind of thing? Maybe it's the way maybe it's the way a particular atom moves or doesn't move. Maybe it's these interrelation of these objects. Can we see these patterns in some other way,
Well, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, what Krishnamurti is intimating here is what feels like kind of an alchemical process when it comes to beliefs, and especially when it comes to toxic feeling states. All of us at some time could be triggered. And so for me, if I've done a great job on a film step outline and the response is, we can't use this, it's a waste of time or something, the first thought or the first reaction is usually not the most authentic one. Mm-hmm. And so it may create a certain kind of toxic feeling of shame in my body. And what that shame feels like, it's just like having too much acidity in your mm-hmm. body.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what do we do with that? And there's been multifarious theories about it, but for me, taking what both of them are talking about, it's really about, pausing and breathing, and then, in a sense, just kind of settling into the depths of the body wisdom. Mm-hmm. For change to happen. Because with all kinds of therapies, there's all these ideas and, just have positive visions, and there's just many, many different approaches. But for me, it's really about sinking down into the body wisdom. And it's kind of curious because I've been bringing storytelling work into neuroscience and to explain neuroscience research. So there's better communication between doctors and patients and kind of things like that. And I know that some neuroscientists are kind of like David Bohm, kind of just very slowly kind of moving into areas to talk about things like mind and consciousness. Because in Western medicine, there isn't really a definition of it. From the research I've done, the neuroscientists I've talked to, it's kind of like, well, what's the difference? We use these terms all the time. Like, what's the difference between the brain and the mind? Is the mind something that's physiological? Because the brain is. But we kind of use these terms all the time. When we use the term like consciousness, well, what does that actually mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that part of what David Bohm and Krishnamurti are, kind of talking about here is like, yeah, how can we talk about this in a way that transformation is possible? And they're very specifically talking about beliefs. And as you know, beliefs can be very deeply, deeply entrenched in our bodies. It could either be something like, I'm not good enough, or da-da-da-da, or compare and despair beliefs. You see somebody get an award on TV, on the Academy Awards, and it's like, God, that movie sucked. That guy, it's kind of like being trapped in that duality. For me, the transformation happens in two primary ways. One, it's being able to descend into the body wisdom. My teacher, Gene Houston, always said that our stories are in our cells and in our DNA. And there's a certain innate wisdom, like you started talking a little bit about archetypes and universal themes. There's a certain innate wisdom, but it's not something that we really can approach to from the rational mind. It's something that we have to experience kinesthetically. We have to kind of descend down into it. So very briefly, when I get triggered, which can happen numerous times during the day, I do my best just to kind of, relax and breathe, and then it's really like kind of like literally going on a journey like into the body. And I do a lot of Qigong, and this helps because it's about the energy circulating in the body. But what I find is that if I kind of descend down into whatever toxic feeling there is there, I remove any kind of analysis of it. I just kind of go down and I just stay kind of on the outside of it. This comes from a process called focusing by Eugene Gendlin. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that you go down and you don't go into the toxic emotion or thoughts or beliefs. You stay around it like you would be staying around a little kitten or a little puppy. And so it's not analysis, it's experience. And then that allows an alchemical process to happen. And for me, what usually happens is I get into this place where I don't even remember what triggered me or what the trauma was, but I know that that's a place I can go to. Now, there's no scientific explanation of all of this. There's been a lot that's written about it in terms of somatic psychology and somatic experience, a way of kind of being in the body. The body wisdom is what it's about. So like in a somatic experience, you find there's deep traumas in the body, and the body takes on certain kind of postures around these traumas. And if somebody skillful is sitting with you and you're kind of breathing with it, it's almost like the body then will go into the intensity of it, and then it's like unwinding a knot in the body. Mm-hmm. So I'm not consciously doing that. I'm just allowing myself to be in that place. So this is one way to look at deep healing and transformation.
How do you think that relates to storytelling? Because you've mentioned stuff like this to me before, even when we're trying to like navigate a particular like story problem, like not sure where the story's supposed to go.
Right.
Was working on one project one time where wasn't sure where the story was supposed to go, and you said that the filmmaker's journey is the hero's journey.
It's a parallel journey.
Yeah, and the idea that what I'm experiencing at any given moment while working on the project is akin to what the characters are experiencing. So if I'm feeling confused and not sure about where to go, like I would interpret that as like, oh fuck, I don't know what to do with this project right now.
Right.
But after I realized that, I could take this feeling and turn it into like material in a way where it's like, oh, okay, if I'm feeling confused, like maybe the characters are confused right now. Actually, that would make a lot of sense that they would be confused at this point because like they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's you resonating with that archetypal situation that they're in, that ultimately by really kind of having the courage to kind of stay with that whole process, that's what the audience will experience when they're watching it. So when I talk about structure, I talk about structures being the order that the audience learns and feels things. It's not some abstract you put the screenplay into from some software or something like that. It's really like, what is the audience going to experience when they're in this point here where there's a lot of worry, fear, and anxiety, where they're going to experience that. It's part of them leaving their comfort zone and going into an unknown world, along with you and along with the characters in the documentary, like in the India documentary.
Yeah. Why do you use the word body wisdom? Because those are like interesting words to put together.
Yeah. Well,
because you're basically saying that, like, hey, there's something associated with what you feel in your body and this sense of meaning, that there's like some latent understanding in your body. That's what it sounds like you're describing.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from both Gene Houston and also Eugene Gendlin. You know, it's kind of like if I wrote a memoir, it would be like unexpected meetings with remarkable people. That became my education.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't found, the right words, because I've been writing articles about this. You could call it embodied storytelling, but, is it, when we're able to relax beneath our self-talk and relax beneath our kind of like knee-jerk reactions to things. I mean, certainly Viktor Frankl talked about this, in the concentration camps. The only way he could survive was he knew he had the power of how he was going to respond.
Yeah, there's a scene in that book where he talks about like how when people would smoke cigarettes, it was like he knew they gave up or something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that I could, and I don't want to kind of move us off track or anything like that, but
I think we're pretty good.
This is the amazing thing that happens when I facilitate story constellations.
Yeah.
So
what is a story constellation?
So a story constellation is derived from the work of people like Virginia Satir, who realized through her background as an educator and then as a trained psychoanalyst, that working with a person on their issues was terribly limiting. You have to look at the family dynamic to know what's going on. And out of that, a brilliant professor in Munich started taking the idea of family constellations and applying them into characters in a film. And my dear friend Daniel Speck, said, you got to come to this workshop. You got to come to this workshop. And I was like refusing the call to adventure, but eventually I went. Fortunately, it was one of those unexpected meetings with a remarkable person. And I decided to kind of challenge him. And basically, like in family constellations, different people stand in and represent different members of your family. And it can be generational because it works with intergenerational trauma as well. And then you just have them move, 3 times, for different time lengths. And the dysfunctional constellation of the family moving through these kind of 3 movements finds a functional way to be a constellation, a healthy kind of productive constellation. This is one of those you had to be there, but at Chorus we did one of these, if you remember.
I think so.
Yeah. So how does all this happen? I've done.
Wait, let me summarize. Let me say to make sure I understand.
Yeah, please.
So basically you have these, in a family, you have these like, the members of the family, and they all have their own unique dysfunctions and quirks.
Right.
But over time, with those dysfunctions and quirks, they operate in some healthy or in a healthy state as a relational object.
Right, but the family doesn't actually stand in for their roles. Oh, this is great. Yeah. Well,
Family constellations. This is kind of the core, I think, psychoanalysis thing that you're talking about,
Yeah.
that it's built on top of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So family constellation, also known as systemic constellation, and systemic family constellation is a pseudoscientific, sorry, I'm cooking you today, man. Therapeutic method which draws on the elements of family systems therapy, existential phenomenology, and Zulu beliefs and attitudes of family. Family constellations diverge significantly from conventional forms of cognitive behavior, and psychotherapy method has been described as physicists as an example of quantumism. So let me see. Go to the down of this. Let's go to like Claude, because I want to read like the people who really.
Yeah, like Virginia Satir, for example.
Yeah, let's like read the people who are really the pros. What are family constellations? What are their and why are they useful? Let's see. It's a therapeutic method developed by German psychoanalyst Bert Hellinger in the 1980s. It's based on the idea that families operate as interconnected systems where unresolved traumas and patterns can affect multiple generations. How a family constellation works. The basic process. Family constellation sessions typically take place in a workshop made up of a group of individuals. Wait, let's go to core principles. Systemic entanglements. Practitioners claim that present-day problems and difficulties may be influenced by trauma suffered in previous generations of the family. Is this similar to what you're saying?
Yeah, this is definitely similar. This is kind of how it all kind of started.
Yeah.
And other therapists and psychiatrists kind of played with it in different ways. But there's a wide variety of different approaches to how to do this.
Here, this is interesting. Experiential learning. Rather than just talking about problems, the method provides a visceral, embodied experience of family dynamics that can reveal patterns participants weren't consciously aware of.
That's it in a nutshell. And in stories, it's the characters in your story that weren't aware of patterns that were there. But keep in mind, it's not the family members standing in. You have representatives that stand in for the different family members. Like I have representatives stand in for the different characters in a story, and they don't know anything about the story.
Totally.
And because, you do some work with them to kind of come into their bodies and relax and all of that. And then as they start to move around, they're in this emotional, relational field where they know who they want to be close to, further away. They know things about everyone there. So how do they know that? They don't even know who the story is about. Mm-hmm. It's in that relational field that they sense it. And that's the body wisdom, and there aren't a lot of words to express it, but it's like you are able to kind of feel things in a constellation of characters, and you move and you start to realize that it's not about the individual anymore. It's about how we move in our constellations.
Right. So that this kind of thing shifted your perspective from like thinking of it as like evaluating storytelling from a single person experience to some kind of relational experience.
Well, yeah, definitely that, and also how to approach the process of it. It was like, early on I read this book by Rollo May called The Courage to Create, who was, fortunately for me, talking about the archetypal stages of creativity. And so when you start to get these kind of like bits and pieces of this kind of puzzle, but because after I've done like probably over 100 of these story constellations, in each one of them, things are revealed about the characters and their relationships that the writer had no idea about. Right. So, for example, there was one film story I was working on about a young boy who's older, very nice, but alcoholic father kept telling him he was going to take him to Cooperstown to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And they never quite made it. And in this kind of constellation that came out, the writer, it was his story about he and his father when he was younger. The writer realized through the constellation that the father felt terrible because he really wanted to help his son fulfill his dream, where from the son's perspective for the next decades was, my father was too drunk to care.
Oh.
So it reveals family secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a story constellation, how does that work exactly? It's like you're giving somebody a prompt, you're giving someone like a premise, and then you have multiple people and you ask them to play different characters.
So the way that it works is that, a writer director has a story. They've written a script or something like that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, even though writers don't like to admit it, there's always blind spots because they're looking at the story through a certain kind of perception that has more to do with duality between characters than the quantum view of the whole family, or in this case, the whole character web. So you get 6 or 7 people that know nothing about the story, and the writer is there. And you start out by doing some, kind of relaxation, meditative type exercises where they start to know what a body feeling is. So, I would say something like, if you're in the group, I would say, can you remember how it feels to be with a really close friend where it's just relaxing, you don't have to perform, you can do nothing, but just get the sense of what that feels like. And then you kind of have them move, and then they go into another neutral state, and you can say like, what does it feel like when you've worked hard, you're going on vacation with your family, everything is you've got everything packed, you're ready to go, you go out, you get to the airport and you get, upgraded to business class and you're going to a great place, you're going to New Zealand or something like that. And then just as you're taking off, you have this thought that you might have left the tea kettle on in the house.
Yeah.
So can you feel what that feels like? So you take them through these different kind of feeling states. And my favorite one is once you've had some time doing this, then I'll say, use your imagination with this, but I really want you to feel and know that you have not done anything wrong in your entire life. So you can feel can you feel?
Yeah, for sure.
You feel this kind of change,
Totally.
in your body. So it's almost like body wisdom is like the weather, it kind of keeps moving. And sometimes it's like the weather in Ireland, which changes every 10 minutes. I don't know if you've been there, but it's pouring rain, it's sunshine, it's windy. So that kind of gets back to, changing the way we perceive and respond to the world, because in doing so many of these, I started to realize that, no, we're not really who we think we are, and that mind chatter is not at all, it's just basically telling lies the whole time. We're really what we hold between ourselves and others.
So in this analysis,
Yeah.
when you're going through these exercises, this is making someone more in tune with their body and kind of like more giving them like a heightened awareness of what they're experiencing and how what they're experiencing can change, and that they have these different kinds of feelings going through them at all times, right? But then where does the relational element come in?
Well, it's part of the magic of the process, because there's usually 3 movements, sometimes 4. So people will come out, and everybody might be a little bit tense, like the beginning of a story would be, because the writer will move them to different places around the room. And then they start to just talk about how they're feeling. And is there anyone they want to be closer to, anyone they want to be further away from, and so on. This kind of all comes out. You go through everybody, and we film them because it's so you can kind of see what's actually happening. And then you have, let's say, now you can move half the way to where you want to be in the room. When I count to 3, and there's all this movement, and then there's usually like kind of laughter and energy release and things like that. And then you go around and talk to people, and this is where they'll start reflecting exactly what's going on in the story without knowing anything about it, just by their relation to different people in the story. I facilitated one of these for M. Night Shyamalan, and his producer and film crew and all that kind of came to the American Film Institute 3-camera shoot and all this kind of thing, and the cameraman and the cinematographer, they just thought this was California woo-woo like you see in these Wikipedias. And we had like really amazing people that are comfortable in their body, that we're going to be standing in. And so they're filming all this and they're just really kind of making sarcastic remarks. And in the final movement, the main character approaches the antagonist and voices the climax of the story without knowing anything about it. So it's kind of like, it's not just the people, the writer and the people in the constellation that go through a change, the observers go through a change as well. And in fact, it's a little bit like that writer, character, audience field of resonance. How they work, I don't know. I just call it story magic.
Yeah. So when there's no prompt or premise or anything, like how do you get these characters to, or how do you get these people to act in relation to each other? You must be saying you're the mother, you're the father.
No, everyone has a different way of doing this. Some people give them all the information and then they push them around. You know, they'll move someplace and they'll go and they'll put the main character and the antagonist face to face. And
so they'll tell them that they're the main character and the antagonist.
They'll do all this kind of stuff. And for me, it's like I take a total laissez-faire approach. I don't want anybody to know anything.
And so these are not the actors playing the roles.
No, they're just people. They're called representatives.
Yeah.
So there's representatives for your family. There's representatives for your characters.
Yeah.
I've done this for people like.
And these are just people that are part of the team or something like that.
Well, they're not part of the film team. They're just people that feel comfortable in their body. Like I did this for an Austrian film director at his house, and there was a couple there, friends of mine, that had like kind of just gotten married, and they were really kind of in gushing still. And at one point in the constellation, the husband, my friend Richard Beeben, was a character who was, he was in prison. He didn't, he was saying, I'm here and I'm in prison, I can't go out, but nobody knew that he was in prison and from the story.
Yeah.
And his wife couldn't stand it, so she started crying because she felt her husband was in prison. So you need to find people that are comfortable just to kind of go with it's like a
body simulation.
Instincts. It's to go with your body instincts.
So you're kind of like simulating a story.
Yeah.
And you're seeing like, okay, how do humans react to this? And then that generates material in some way.
Yeah, it generates all the blind spots for one thing. Now,
so what do you mean by that? Like, because you started by saying like writers have a lot of blind spots. So what is a blind spot typically? I guess it's because they're writing it through their experience, and it's tough to see it as a constellation in that sense.
They're writing it through their perception, the way they're perceiving the story. They sometimes have judgments about the characters, and they should move a certain way, and this and that. But keep in mind, they're just looking at the story from their point of view and putting it on the page. So they're not seeing the 360-degree story.
Sure.
So it can be something like learning something about your antagonist, about why they're doing what they're doing. And the other beauty of the story constellation process, I'd love to do one while I'm here with you and some folks, because it's important work to be doing. But there's a lot of times where you go through this whole process, and then if you like, as the writer, you can then interview these characters and ask them any question, and their answers come like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So in the case of the one with the alcoholic father who, was going to take him to the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame it was, right?
Yeah, in Cooperstown.
Yeah. And so that reveals to the writer this other perspective, like gives him more insight into like the father's perspective on the situation, which is hard for him to see because maybe he's pulling inspiration from some of his own life experience or something, and he's writing it from the son's perspective. And maybe like every character has like their own motivations. There's no every character is like complete. you know? And so when you're writing it from one perspective,
Yeah.
it's tough to see the perspective of these other characters that maybe they're doing something for equally equally valid motivations.
That's right.
Right? Maybe they have like tons of nuance, just like your main character does. But of course they do. Right? Even if you haven't developed it, like of course every character has full nuance and characteristics and motivations and regrets and all of these things.
Yeah.
And so I guess when you kind of simulate this in these constellations, asking people to put them in different scenarios and look at how they react, it kind of maybe takes you out of your own limited view into the story and seeing it from all of these other angles.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's moving from a kind of binary view. Like oftentimes the writers create antagonists because they want to punish them and, you know, show everybody how wrong they are and so on. But, you know, that's not it's not a productive response, because it's like you start to find that you have all these projections on, let's say it's the CEO of Nestle's, you know, who's bought up the water supplies in Africa, so that, you know, to sell their bottled water internationally, but people don't have water in the villages, kind of thing. So you could create a character like that who you want everybody to hate, but that's not really a story, because we know from the hero's journey that antagonistic characters oftentimes are a projection of our own shadow.
Yeah. People don't want to do that, though. People don't want to do that. They don't want to move out of their own view. I think you probably saw with the story Constellation. I think even if you're writing a piece, it's maybe hard to step back and look at it from other perspectives.
Yeah.
There's something that's very difficult about it. When you have to step back and look at something from someone else's perspective, especially when it's like as core as like when you're writing a film, or like when you're writing like about some dynamics. Like if you're looking at someone else's perspective based on like a video game, you know what I mean? Or video game review, it's different. But if you're looking at someone else's perspective from something core, some core fundamental belief you have that informs your perception of reality, and you have to look at that in someone else's view, it's hard, because even the act of considering it, you start to feel your reality collapsing. You know, you start to feel your perspective collapsing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you've run into that. Like people don't want to do this, right? In some way.
Well, the other thing is you have a representative stand in for the writer.
Right.
So the writer.
And so the writer's observing all this? The real writer is observing all this?
Yeah. And so like in meditation, when you start to observe something, things change.
Interesting.
Yeah. Beliefs change, attitudes change, reactions change. Yeah. That's
crazy, man.
It is, and I love doing it.
Why do you like doing it so much?
Well, because I see, it's almost like you can see how, in this case, a writer, and of course, even though they're writing a so-called fictional story, oftentimes the orchestrations of the characters and the character webs and all that are really metaphors for their life. I mean, writers don't think about this, and it's probably better they don't think about it. Yeah. But it's kind of like I've often just said, in order to be a successful writer, you have to learn how to manage your fear and accept being with the uncertainty of the process, to be kind of on that edge.
Say that line again.
Yeah. So
you have to accept. In order to be a good writer, you have to accept
that you're going to face uncertainty. You know what it's like when you're doing the startup film or something like that. You get to a certain point, it's like, I'm not sure if this is working. Exactly. I don't know.
Don't even know if I have a film.
Yeah, so you can feel sorry about yourself, or go out and get drunk, or or the worst is to go into blame, complaint, and self-pity, which actually is something that really cuts the creative flow.
Totally.
Yeah, but and you can always find other miserable writers to commiserate with.
For sure.
Yeah, so it's really it's kind of the courage to be with the uncertainty, knowing that this constellation, whether you have a story constellation or you're just looking at your constellation of characters, that there's wisdom in that constellation.
Yeah, it's a difficult path.
Yeah, except for it's a difficult path because new. It was kind of reminded me of this father was talking to his 8-year-old son about a new job, and he was just saying, it's really, really hard. It's really difficult for me to be, doing all the, to be working on this new job and not exactly know what I'm doing. And the little boy said, well, maybe it's just a new experience.
I remember this one film that you showed that I watched. It was really kind of fucked me up, actually. It was about this woman. You'll remember it as soon as I say it, but I don't remember the name. It's like this woman. I think she goes back to the Philippines or Cambodia or somewhere, and she like goes to see her family.
Oh yeah.
What was that called again? There's some that starts with a C. You could probably find it, Robbie. If you like,
it was going
something.
back
Something with a C, going back to something.
back to Vietnam.
No, it wasn't that.
No, I mean that's not the title. I can't. The titles kind of drop out. It's like you see. Yeah, we'll find it because it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary.
Yeah, let's see.
About a woman going back to find her family in Vietnam.
It was a documentary.
Yeah.
Delicado? No, that's not it.
Daughter from Da Nang, is it something?
Yeah,
like
that's
that?
it. Daughter from Da Nang.
Boom.
That's it. Yeah. Good job. This
What-
movie messed me up, man.
Yeah, how did it mess you up? What do you think was going on?
So the film starts off like, let's just see where she goes back. She goes back to Vietnam, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna I won't get this exactly, but the movie starts off where she's talking about how she grew up in America or something. I don't know exactly where she grew up, but somewhere in America. She's very American. Like,
yes, she's been Americanized in the South.
Yeah, she's like very. I just remember watching and think like she's very American, and like, so you watch this and you see this person, and she tells kind of like this story about how she ended up here, how she ended up in America, and it's like it has to do with like the Vietnam War or something, or something like that, and like sacrifices that needed to be made for her to come over here, and
it was called the baby lift. And it was very controversial because they were taking babies and bringing them to America to be adopted.
Yeah, and so she was one of these babies, and she got adopted.
Right.
And so she's just American. She's like an American.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like she has this idea of her mom and stuff, right? And like she goes back and she goes to like meet them, and she could just tell she has this idea of what it's going to be like, and it's not like that. It's not like that. It's like it becomes kind of dark, where in the beginning it's like really kind of interesting and she's cool, but then they start like asking her for money.
Exactly.
And it becomes a money thing.
Yeah. And
it just totally just becomes a money thing. And yeah, it was just really dark. Because it was just so real.
Yeah.
And I learned through that process that there's this, like when I watched that movie and I saw the scene where she's like where it became about money, I felt like a lot of shame.
Yeah.
Right, like when I was watching that. And it was one of the first, it's one of what that and like other moments as well has made me realize, like in documentary, it's like it's really hard because like you have to just like roll the camera, like you gotta let it roll now. And it's weird where it's like you're feeling these things and you're just like, oh fuck, maybe we should give them a moment or whatever. But it's like, no, this is the movie, man.
Right.
And it's very hard to have that awareness. I think it's very, very hard to have that awareness, to know that, to see something like that happening and to be like, don't cut the cameras because this is the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage. You're just sitting there with that gross feeling.
And
you're filming while she's being asked for money,
and the other amazing thing is the filmmakers had no idea what was going to happen when they went back with her.
Yeah, for sure.
But it kind of brings up there's about 8 essential elements of storytelling, and one of them is that meaning comes through contrast and opposition. So if you think about the two worlds, she was in the deep South like a cheerleader, and all part of the that whole Ku Klux Klan world. Not she wasn't a part of the Ku Klux Klan, but all part of that oppressive type society. And then all of a sudden she goes to this place where people might not know what they're going to eat next.
Yeah.
But I've found that in order to really go into a story at a certain point, because you talked about an archetypal or universal level, that stories tend to be about one primary relationship. There's all the family relationships, there can be antagonists and so on. But for example, Hamlet is really a mother-son story.
Yeah.
This is a mother-daughter story. And you could judge them for asking for money, or, the mother being in kind of really has such a stern countenance. But she fell in love with an American soldier, had sex, had this baby who she loved, and because she couldn't afford the baby, she had to give it away to the baby lift to be taken away. So not only did she feel shamed by her village, she also really, it broke the tie between her and her child. And as you know, that is a deep, deep connection.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's hardcore.
So that's why we have, even though she comes across sometimes as very stern or manipulative or something like that, you have to understand how she's been living through all of this.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. It's crazy.
And I think I got something wrong in the story. I think that she had the baby and they couldn't afford it, and then had to give up the baby. But I think there was a father who was in the Viet Cong, because he comes into the story later.
Yeah, we can read this.
Okay, so, go ahead. It's been years since I've seen it.
Daughter from Da Nang. Is this TIFF? Oh, sweet. Is it screening right now?
Oh, no.
No? Winner of the documentary Grand Jury Prize at the 2001 Sundance Film Festival and nominated for the Best Documentary Feature at the 2002 Academy Awards. Daughter from Da Nang's deceptively simple story of family reunion slowly tangles into a tragic web of debt, one that war and love spin together. At the heart of this engrossing film about a transnational Amerasian adoptee going in search of her Vietnamese birth mother is Heidi Bub, a disarming woman from Tennessee desperate for affection and kinship. Transported to the United States via Operation Baby Lift, an organized evacuation of thousands of orphans at the end of the war, Heidi seeks to reconnect the broken threads of identity and affiliation, but her quest reveals a profound imprint of historical ruptures and geopolitical rifts that ordinary people and love alone might not be able to bridge. Yeah, it was crazy. It was really well edited too.
Oh yeah.
It's tough to edit a film like this when you think you're going down a particular path and it reveals something that complex. It's like, you know what I mean? To like find that, parse it out, and then like get it to hit like that kind of a story with that footage, and pretty impressive.
Well, it's part of the there seems to be in virtually every documentary I've worked on dozens of documentaries, that the filmmaker has one idea and he's following that all the way through, and suddenly there's a pivot point where you either continue to follow that idea or follow this path that's opening up. And so that's probably the most difficult time to stay with the uncertainty of what's happening. So in Capturing the Friedmans, the filmmaker wanted to do something kind of a Errol Morris-like approach to birthday clowns in New York.
Yeah.
Talk about dark. This is a dark
I haven't
one.
heard of that film.
And so he's halfway into shooting the film about these birthday clowns, and
Oh yeah.
capturing the Freedmans. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
And then
remember
one
now.
of the clowns, who's the main one he's following, says, "By the way, my brother and my father were convicted as pedophiles, and I have 100 hours of family footage. So do you stay with the quirky documentary, or do you take this descent down into that?" And he went for the descent.
That's crazy. Is that actually how it went down?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it often happens in, Prom Night in Mississippi,
Yeah.
which I structured and which Paul Saltzman brilliantly directed. That originally was a movie called Return to Mississippi, and it was about Paul going back to where he experienced, working for civil rights, like in 1963 or something like that. And I'm watching that. I'm watching all the, getting dailies and things like that. And I'm just thinking, where's this going to go? And then he interviews Morgan Freeman, and Morgan Freeman says, 10 years ago, I tried to inaugurate the first integrated prom, but they turned it down. And I'm thinking about doing it again. So for me, it's like the story architect. When something like this comes up, I get really excited because it's the through line. And it's like, it's easy for me to say, stop what you're doing, move down there because the prom is starting. And that became
Totally
the film. Powerful narrative that was more of a historical documentary. And then you get to this point, and either you continue with what you're doing or you just pivot and go in that direction. That's happened in virtually every film I've worked on.
Yeah. The fact that you have like Morgan Freeman saying that, like, oh, he tried to do this integrated prom and it was turned down. He's trying again. That's like crazy assist.
Just the idea of it.
Yeah, because
alone.
it's like you have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
Now you have the historical context. You got a present time story that you can like navigate through. Do you have like a dramatic question? What happens when they try to do this prom? Is it actually going to work? Is he going to be able to pull it off?
Will there be violence?
Yeah, will there be violence? What is the resistance against it? Was this film nominated for an Academy Award?
It wasn't, but it premiered at Sundance, and it was a huge success there.
It did well at Sundance.
And
right?
HBO bought it. So it was very successful in that way.
Totally. This is cool. So what year was this?
The 2008 was when the film came out.
So they didn't have an integrated prom?
This was the first integrated prom.
Really?
And they still had their...
In 2008?
Yeah, and they still had... Well, maybe it was 2007. The film came out in 2008.
Oh my God. There were people not cool with this, right?
Totally, yeah. And that's another thing that happens in many documentaries is there's, like the lawyer for the Ku Klux Klan was kind of threatening to sue them and all these different things, and they didn't know if they'd be able to go on with the project. And I said, wait a minute. These are the people you want to be filming in the project,
Totally.
And so they did. And
they filmed the lawyer of the Ku Klux Klan? Holy shit.
Yeah, and in one scene, Paul goes to the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, he's a courageous and super talented filmmaker, for sure.
What do you think makes him talented?
Well, a lot of it has to do with his interpersonal skills, like how he relates to the subjects, and sets up a kind of an atmosphere of like safety, being able to say whatever they want to say and things like that. He's a great interviewer also. Mm-hmm. And there was a fascinating structure I created. There was, 120 hours of footage. I don't know if you call that for video, but of tape.
Yeah.
And so, how do you approach? And I'll get to this film in a minute. The Last White Knight. So he had wisely filmed like 8 different students and followed them through the whole time.
Yeah.
And then in kind of looking at all that, I realized that two of the girls had the most, dramatic and challenging arc.
This is happening in real time? Like, this is in post after you're looking at the footage, or are you with them like on set walking around?
This is in post, because when I came in, I was working on another project in New Mexico, but I was getting all the footage and all of that. So when I came in, it was 120 hours.
Got it.
What are we going to carve into this
Totally.
to create a story?
Got it. So you're starting to look at these 8 students.
Look at the 8 students, and there's 2 girls, one black girl, one white girl, that have fascinating arcs. And so I told their stories parallel all the way through from the beginning to the end.
Nice.
There's all these different strategies. Like I also kind of set up in the opening, there was a kind of teaser, like the one black girl said, I was supposed to be summa cum laude or something like that, but they didn't give it to me because I was black.
Yeah.
Now that's something that's going to happen later on in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the white girl is saying like, I can't get a job in this town because I have black friends. And so then you're setting that up, and then you're following that arc where everything is going on, building up to the final prom and what's going to happen.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, and that structure is something that really worked, because it created, even though they weren't actually friends, by the film festivals and all that, they were best friends, but it just gave the audience a relationship
Totally.
between this black girl and this white girl, who were so fascinating in their own ways. And yeah, then it was a huge success. One of the editors, Steve Phillipson, and I got to the Sundance early, and there was a screening for like 800 of the employees and volunteers, and we had to introduce it and then get up for questions afterwards. And sitting in the back of the audience, and you don't know what's going to happen, but the reactions were so strong during the film, and sometimes there'll be a big laugh.
Yeah.
And I would turn to Steve and say, "We planned that, didn't we?" He goes, oh yeah, we planned that one."
Yeah, I guess you don't always know how people are going to react to everything, but
Yeah.
when it's working, though.
Oh, for sure. It's a buzz. You can feel the crowd.
Totally.
Yeah.
Did you have to handle, like, when you were structuring that out, so you have the kind of core design decision is like picking these 2 characters and knowing that that's what's going to carry the story forward. Then you've also got the prom itself as a kind of like narrative device or something where it's like that has a beginning, middle, and end. So that gives you like momentum. And then I guess there's like a historical context and exposition, and
Yeah, there's backstory about blacks being hanged for looking at a woman, or a white woman, or all that. So you have that whole.
How do you determine when to put that in? Is that part of what you're doing structure-wise as well?
So you'll remember that once you kind of discover the narrative drive, like, will there be the first integrated prom in Charleston, Mississippi?
The dramatic question.
Yeah. But the drive, what's driving that story forward? Once you have that, then you can start kind of branching out into the backstory, go deeper into the relationships, and so on.
So in this case, what's driving it? The fact that Morgan Freeman's saying, let's do this.
The driving question is, will there be the first integrated prom in Charleston, Mississippi?
Or not.
Yeah, or not, of course, yeah. And there's the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs. Yeah, all the way through threats of violence.
So what is the process when you have that driving question? What is the process of then exploring these things and then coming back to the question and being like, hey, does this make sense? You know what I mean? Like how is the driving question continually used to parse out various materials and determine what works, what doesn't work?
It's a great question. So the narrative arc is like the trunk of the tree. And it's being fed from the roots of the backstory, everything that's kind of happened. And so once you have that, it's what's going to keep the audience in their seats for 2 hours.
The question
So,
they keep
yeah.
coming back to in some
So
way.
once you kind of raise that question, then the branches are going deeper into the relationships and what's sometimes called the vertical story, going deeper into the emotional, psychological relationships. And there's incredible stories there, you know, of a mixed couple and the father of the girl that is the redneck that doesn't want them to be together. And, you know, at that point, this fellow's name was Glenn, the redneck father and stuff. And it's like, I fall in love with these characters because they're so important. You know, the Threshold Guardians are kind of so important. It's like, yeah, keep filming and that. And so the whole idea of the narrative drive is it lets you tell the vertical story. It lets you take the audience deeper into the relationships and also lets you then reveal the backstory, like what was going on, you know, 50 years, 100 years in this town. And through all of that, you know, what the alchemical process is that you stay with it and you stay with it and stay with it until there's a universal theme that starts to emerge. And the universal theme was that racism is not something that's inherent in our physiology or in our brain or in our nervous systems. That racism is something that's handed down from generation to generation.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Holy fuck, man.
yeah.
Did you have a moment on that project where that came clear, that there was a moment where that came clearly to everyone on the team, or how did that emerge?
It actually emerged from Morgan Freeman's insights about the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was, of course, processing it for himself too, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, growing up in that town, we also had his backstory to talk about. And he's somebody who just got lost into the world of books.
Yeah.
You know, he would just, and that's why he became so brilliant. You know, he was kind of an autodidact through all of that. But he easily could have just stayed up in this Hollywood bubble and not dealt with any of these things. But, you know, it's his roots. So I think that I don't think he was planning this to happen in the documentary, but, you know, Paul's fearless when it comes to approaching people and getting to talk to them and all of that. He actually, when he was a 20-year-old, he had a very successful kind of political talk show on Canadian television.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so in creating the confidence with Morgan Freeman was able to talk more openly about the situation. Now that, like I said, that wasn't the plan, but as soon as I heard about what would it be like to have the first integrated prom, you know, it's like I get excited about these things, Vin. You know, it's like when you find the narrative drive, it's kind of like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah. What is a Threshold Guardian?
So Threshold Guardian in mythology is, in drama, they would be considered an antagonist. But when you start the hero's journey, you get a call to adventure. Usually there's a lot of excitement about it. But then at that point, you start to kind of experience a duality. And the duality is you know, like when you get started on a project, you can be all excited about it. So you have this like real desire, but underneath the desire, there's fear. You have all this conviction, but then underneath there could be self-doubt. And so this is kind of what happens when we start any journey. It could be getting a medical evaluation back and you have to start moving on your healing. It could be an accident that happens where all of a sudden everything stops. You know, if you had a very physical job and then you had to kind of stay home. But in the desire to be successful, there's always this underbelly that throws us into ambivalence. So we can see here all the different.
Can you explain the hero's journey?
Yeah.
Like,
so
how is it possible that this guy created this thing, and it's like so significant? Like, how is this possible? You know, like this is created by Joseph Campbell, right?
Yeah.
How is that possible that he like synthesized this thing? This has influenced a lot of things.
It has, and we may even be getting into the heroine's journey a bit later. But so Joseph Campbell, a genius.
Yeah. Why do you think he was a genius? What's his story? He was,
from a boy, he was watching these. I think they were these kind of carnival performances where they were affecting the Wild West. And he would go and watch these, and it was always the cowboys versus the Indians, a great duality. And he was always more fascinated by the Native Americans because of their culture. So he started studying, cultures from all over the world, and started studying stories from all over the world. And after doing this, that he had just an amazing mind to be able to synthesize all these things. But after going through probably hundreds of mythologies, fairy tales, and all that, he started to see that there were certain commonalities in them. And those commonalities were looked at in terms of a circle or a cycle that was divided in two, where the top part was the day world, our waking world, what we're used to, but the bottom part was really the night world or the dream world.
Can we see a visual of that, Robbie? Hero's journey diagram. This up here. Let's see this.
So, yeah.
Just open it up, yeah. Yeah. So let's see that, the known and the unknown, the day world. So this is split into two.
Yeah, so this is, and there's been so many variations on this. Like usually the circle is kind of split in two between they say known and unknown. Sometimes it's called the day world and the night world.
Does this work?
Yeah, this is, I think simple is better. I remember there were so many people that were riffing off this. At one point, there was one person that came up with like 360 stages of the heroine's journey along the way. But basically, it starts out in our ordinary everyday world, and then there's something that happens. It might be an assignment. Sometimes it's a blunder where you kind of blunder into an adventure. There's different ways that it kind of happens. But, even this is, let me see that. So.
Yeah, can you teach us with this one?
Yeah, I can. But there's something important because it's actually, and we can look at it this way because the heroine's journey goes in this clockwise.
Let's do that one next.
We will, yeah. After a little bathroom break.
You can take one now if you need to.
Yeah, why don't we? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm just going to let it run.
Okay. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Yeah, it's like the movie Get Out. Tricked into thinking it was a podcast. It turned out to be a prison cell.
It's over here.
No, I muted everything and then I have it on the transition.
I think, just when you're looking stuff up, if we don't see it, it's helpful.
If you don't see it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like if we don't.
Yeah.
And then you pull it. That's on it.
I'm trying to find references.
No, you can do it. That's like what works best for me.
Yeah.
A little bit of like anger in there, just a little bit, maybe just like a drop.
Does this guy get grumpy every once in a while?
I don't see it.
Robbie hasn't. This is Robbie's first time operating this, so he's only seen so much. We're back. Okay, cool. All right, so Robbie, if you could just pull up a visual of the hero's journey, and we'll get Tom to like explain it to us, and then we'll get into the heroine's journey.
Hey, look at that. Heroine's journey versus hero's journey. I'm doing a lot of that.
You want to put your headphones in, Tom?
Oh, your headphones, Tom.
Oh.
I want to make sure we get some foundational
Yeah, it's good.
on the hero's journey, just because I know it's like a very common concept, but I think having you run through it, I think would be like really useful.
Sure.
I think what would be useful is just pulling up a diagram of it. And is this good for you? Can you work with this, or would you like to see some?
Well,
other?
I can. Will the audience see this?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But if you want a different visual, we can show you like an assortment, and you could pick one.
Yeah, because we can actually probably use that for the heroine's journey. See, it goes counterclockwise, and there's a reason for
The heroine.
it. The hero's journey goes counterclockwise. So
So you're seeing all these ones that go
you
clockwise.
might look up Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, or even Chris Vogler's. Chris Vogler's hero's journey is.
So we're looking for one that goes counter. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're like that. All of these are going. I don't think he's gonna like this one, the 17-stage monomyth. And it got anything simpler?
But I can pick out the right moments.
We'll show you one
like
more.
I
We'll
said,
show you one more. It's interesting that you're mentioning the counterclockwise thing.
Yeah.
Because so many of them just go clockwise. Maybe something like this.
That could work.
Yeah, I think that might work. There we go.
Hey,
All right, so you can use this as a visual aid. So everyone can see this. So can you please teach us about the hero's journey?
Yeah, sure. So that's what I was saying. The hero's journey really came about from Joseph Campbell and certainly his associate Gene Houston, who I also studied with, studying stories from all times and civilizations, and finding out that they had common archetypal or universal aspects to them. And so in the broadest sense, what they found was that the journey tended to go from a known world to an unknown world, where the rules of the unknown world were completely different than those of the known world. So the hero's journey begins with what's called the call to adventure. Now, on the outside, you get an assignment. You might refuse the call to adventure, but one way or another, you tend to get pulled down into it, with the idea being that if you resist your call to adventure, chances are, through an accident, a mistake or something like that, you're going to get dragged down into the unconscious, dragged down into the unknown world. Because everyone needs to have these experiences. Mm-hmm. So there's different aspects of the call to adventure. One is the refusal of the call. So like Luke Skywalker refuses the call to be a Jedi warrior because he has to help his aunt and uncle on the farm. That's kind of the typical. But once you either accept the call to adventure or you're kind of dragged into the adventure, you tend to meet a kind of guide. They call it a supernatural aid. You know, there's different ways of saying it, but you meet a wise person who's gone on the journey before, who provides you with an amulet, a power object to help you go through the journey. Mm-hmm. And like with Luke Skywalker, that's the lightsaber. Mm-hmm. So as I was saying, that as you kind of are beginning this journey, you tend to be in a state of ambivalence as you're approaching what's called the first threshold. Force is going in different directions. Now, at the first threshold, this is when typically you meet the first kind of antagonistic character, an antagonistic person. They call them threshold guardians. And they're called threshold guardians because they appear to be antagonistic from the outside. But when you understand the purpose of it, they're testing whether or not you have the strength and courage to go on the journey. So they might seem antagonistic, but from the perspective of the whole journey, you had to kind of pass that test to see if you had the wherewithal to go through it. So that movement from the day world to the night world is something we experience every night when we go to sleep. Mm-hmm. We're in the day world, we dream, we're in the night world, and we come back. So we're on these heroes' journeys every day. Mm-hmm. Being able to cross the threshold and pass through the threshold guardians, like in Star Wars, what they do when they are on the way to the Star Wars bar, and Obi-Wan, is talking to the guards in his special talk, and then they kind of move through. That once you cross that threshold, then you start to go through what's called the road of trials. And so these tests and challenges, as they say here, consciousness expands. Of course, that's something that Wikipedia articles would probably not want to deal with. Helpers arrive as needed. Basically, you're going into a dream world filled with the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, because haven't had that experience before. So this descent is usually a literal descent. Again, in Star Wars, you probably remember the scene where they are trying to escape with Princess Leia, and they go into the trash compactor. Yeah. So all of that road of trials is really kind of bringing you down, down, down to what here they call the nadir or the abyss, but it's the initiation. And in that initiation, this is where characters will, heroes or heroines, will kind of meet their shadow, their opposite. We've talked about this earlier, how we judge oftentimes antagonists and make them one-dimensional when they're actually multi-dimensional. Mm-hmm. But the idea here is that on the outside, it's a major clash, let's say between, Luke and Darth Vader. But on the inside, it's an initiation in that through this outer conflict, you're going down into a place where it feels like you're dying. It's actually the death of the ego. Like Joseph Campbell calls this first stage we've been talking about. It's the disintegration of the ego, but it feels like a death. And facing the shadow, which is done in many, many different therapies, is what happens in this initiation. And in terms of the story, the audience needs to be brought to a place where the hero or the heroine is either going to grow or die. That's Gene Houston's words. And so usually there's a kind of death and a resurrection that takes place in the initiation. In this moment. Yeah.
In the abyss.
Yeah, and so it's, it's that place where it seems that you're going to die, but in fact you had to die and so to grow. Mm-hmm. All your old beliefs had to die and so to grow, and only that could only happen in this underworld. So from there, once you kind of have this life-centering, life-renewing act, it could have been similar to what happened to me when I walked outside after Midnight Cowboy, when that kind of change happens. It happens on all these different mental, physical, emotional, spiritual levels. Then you have what they sometimes call the runes of wisdom. You've got the power now to come back to the day world and share what you've learned to help transform things in the day world. But what tends to happen here is that once you kind of have a sense now what you need to do, there tends to be a kind of like procrastination, because it really feels so good where you are. Why go back to what Joseph Campbell calls with this return threshold?
So you're kind of like in the transformation apotheosis stage now.
Yeah, that's right.
It feels comfortable there in some way.
Well, yeah, it's like kind of being in the womb again.
Yeah.
What does Joseph Campbell talk about life from the tomb of the womb to the womb of the tomb?
Mm.
So
what would that be in like Star Wars at this point here?
I think in Star Wars at this point, now that Luke has faced his shadow with Darth Vader, who he doesn't know is his father at this time, and has kind of been empowered to go on the way. So they call it the runes of wisdom. What the runes of wisdom for him is to follow the force, which is like follow the consciousness of your intuition and of your instincts. So that's kind of the gift that he has. And so when you get to that certain point and you have it, there's going to be other return threshold crossings. And one of the reasons why there's a resistance to kind of continuing on is because the threshold guardians, as we go back to the day world, Joseph Campbell referred to them as being a journey of sober eyes. A journey of sober eyes. So you know what it's like when you've worked hard, you've shot the film, you've edited the film, you've had breakthroughs, you're ready to show it to people. But they might not have had the same experience in their lives, so they might not have the same enthusiasm being filled with spirit that you have in showing it. So somehow now you have to come back, like Luke has to come back into the ordinary world and, face Darth Vader, and how is he going to do it alone? And you can almost say that this end of the return stage of the hero's journey is almost like the beginning stage of the heroine's journey, which we'll get to a bit later. But then what you find is that when you come back and have the courage to kind of face this jury of sober eyes and kind of move through, there's a kind of another kind of transformation that's happening when you're going through this return stage, and that is that you start to find unexpected allies. Now, it may include like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, spiritual guide being there, but he has died, but he's been internalized. Run, Luke, run. He's been internalized. So then kind of coming back, this is when there's a dramatic technique, creating a character who is an opponent that becomes an ally, and that's the Han Solo character.
Right.
So
interesting.
Because Luke has had the courage to go through this life and death experience with all kinds of, crazy beings and different attacks and being followed by the stormtroopers and so on and so forth, he kind of comes back. It starts to, because he's gone through this change, he's going to start to build a small community. And then when that community comes together, he's like bringing the energy of the underworld into that community, and Han Solo goes from opponent to ally and so on, and they're able to at least subdue Darth Vader, to this point where he's not going to, destroy the earth and everything that resembles the earth. So that's a general idea of the heroine's journey, but where it had the most impact for me was in
the hero's journey, yeah.
In working with my friend of many years and colleague, Keith Cunningham. On our own at the same time, we came to this realization that this journey of the characters there's an analogous hero's journey that the writer or storyteller or filmmaker or artist goes on.
Yeah. So how did you figure that out? Just from observing it?
No, from my own experiences, because I would give myself such a hard time that I'd be writing and I'd feel this ambivalence. And then before I knew it, I wasn't at the computer anymore. I was in the kitchen staring into the refrigerator, not even knowing how I got there.
Yeah.
So, and then I would gather my wits and kind of come back. So it's like, is there something wrong with me? Which means this has just all been kind of an illusion that I could be a storyteller, because I didn't grow up as a storyteller. It's just like, I just had this desire, what's wrong with me? But then I realized that a lot of the feelings I was having, like this ambivalence, were the same feelings that my characters were having at that stage of the story. So it was kind of like, I remember living in LA, having written these 2 successful screenplays with famous actors, and I thought all that was going to work, and it didn't. And I would see like these really these $80,000 sports cars racing by me, and in my mind they were all going to sign lucrative contracts because they knew how to do it.
Yeah.
That was the kind of compare and despair. And then with Joseph Campbell, and also this amazing book by Rollo May called The Courage to Create.
Yeah.
Rollo May was suggesting, he was saying, no, these are archetypal stages that all artists go through. And so it was kind of like that opened up, a certain doorway where I was judging this experience and trapped by perfectionism because I wanted to do it perfectly so that I could be successful and so on, that I realized that, according to Joseph Campbell and Rollo May, that this is the journey that all artists that can affect change in the world have gone on. So that was a pretty big relief. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, I realized that, while you're writing, sometimes you've probably had this experience, you start writing a story and everything's flowing, and then you get to a certain point where it's like, wait a minute, it's not flowing right now. So
totally.
That's the threshold crisis.
It's a test.
Yeah, it's a test. And the real test is to kind of be able to sit with what you're doing objectively, rather than turning it into a drama, and just kind of sit, and you start to kind of experience this kind of what Joseph Campbell will call a unity of opposites, where you feel this ambivalence. I want to do it, but it's not working. I want to do it, it's not working. That's a duality. And so if you kind of realize this is what all artists really go through, and you sink down out of the analytical mind into more of the body wisdom, then you're ready to take that journey. So the parallel journey of the characters with the artist then, as I said earlier, is what the audience goes on when they're watching your film. Now,
they're on this journey too.
Yeah. Now this is not a paint by number approach. Mm-hmm. So because a lot of, you could even see it in a lot of these so-called, Marvel blockbusters and stuff. The main character almost always die and resurrected. In fact, in Superman, he dies and resurrects about 8 times.
The new one?
The new one.
Is it good?
It's if you're watching it from your 8-year-old perspective, then it's fun.
Didn't hit for you.
So I enjoyed it. My kid enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because I always loved Superman.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where this whole my personal experience in writing and in learning from Joseph Campbell and Gene Houston, and later Maureen Murdoch, who created the Heroine's journey, I just realized that that it's this whole field. And if you think about it, Vin, while you're sitting down to write and you're writing, you're in this relational field with your characters and the audience. And so in a sense, you're transcending time and space when you let yourself trust in the creative process. Because the characters haven't been seen on the screen or in the book, and certainly the audience hasn't been there, but the resonance is there. Is that making some sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like the way I see it is that you're kind of saying that. Well, it's just this goes back to what I was saying. It's so hard to process some of these things, right? Because like you look at this graph, right, or this diagram, and it's basically laying out kind of like a diagram of transformation, right? Mm-hmm. This is like how a human being transforms in the day-to-day life of being human,
right?
And it's just yeah, it's so weird because I don't even have the words. How do I say it? it's weird that it's relatable, because the fact that it's relatable means that we're all moving through life in some similar way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's just, there's something about that that's just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that you could watch something like Star Wars or some other film, and in those characters you can see people you know, you can see yourself, you can see situations you've been through, you can reevaluate your own life. It's just, yeah, it's just crazy.
Well, you know, it actually, you know, goes back to, for me, the inspiration was Aristotle.
Yeah.
And poetics. And my understanding was that, you know, Aristotle would watch the audience watching the great Greek plays and tragedies.
Yeah.
And he's basically looking at their body language. So at a certain point, they start squirming. He knows they're getting uncomfortable.
You know what it is, Tom?
Yeah.
I think what it is that throws me off about it, I
Yeah.
don't like how powerful it is.
Okay.
Because if you think about like humanity as like a species, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look at this, the fact that someone can draw a diagram and synthesize something like transformation that applies across like religions, across cultures, right? It's like, it's just crazy that you have this species of humans, and so much of how they orchestrate and interact with reality
Yeah.
is based on the stories they have in their minds. You know?
Well,
and it's just crazy to me. It's just so crazy.
Well,
Right?
it is.
It's just when, and depending on what stories they believe, depending on what they're motivated by, depending on what they feel and how they think, fundamentally alters like what large numbers of people do. It can drive war.
Oh, sure.
It can drive like, you know, peace. It can create the reason why someone lives a certain way.
Yeah.
It can change how someone raises their kids. It's
Well,
it's just weird.
It can. There's two caveats to that.
Yeah.
One, you might be relieved to know that this does not reply to what women go through when they're coming of age and going on adventures.
This.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other
Interesting.
thing is, and this is, you know, whenever something like this comes out, there's all these people like wanting to concretize it. It's like, oh, finally we have our paint by numbers approach, or now we know what to do. And everybody I know that's tried that hasn't been successful.
In this.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
go on the journey, you don't even look at this stuff.
No.
You just trust what's going on.
Totally.
But
But
the
if
other-
you've been on the journey in some way, you look at this
Yeah.
and you know what it means.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because people since the beginning of time have been going through it in a wide variety of cultures, societies, religious groups, tribes. It's like it's a certain kind of universal of human experience. Now, there's another lens to look at it.
Yeah.
And that lens is, I remember Joseph Campbell talking about the stained glass, I think, at Chartres, pardon my French. Chartres. Chartres.
Okay. That's fucking terrible French.
All right, let's hear your Chartres.
I can't say it. I just wanted to make
But
fun of you.
you're not in a position to criticize.
Chart, like, I got to see the word.
Chartre.
Char?
Chartres.
You got to write. I at least need like a visual aid.
Okay, Chartre. Go for it.
Chartre?
Yeah.
Chartres.
And you're giving me shit.
Yeah. How do you say that word, man? Chartres.
There's another tough one that there's a cathedral at Rem, well, REHM or REIM, something like that. I don't know if you can find that one on Google or something like that, but you
He's
can't,
looking.
in French, you can't just say it phonetically. There it is.
Oh, if you click the thing? Oh.
REIM.
Do they have the audio thing?
Well, you could, yeah, I'd be curious if they did, yeah.
Wait, oh, no.
No,
No, that's the other word.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess he says it. Reims. What?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
Reims.
So the
Notre Dame de Reims. Is that a...
So
Damn.
the I don't mean to cast
Yeah.
aspersions on my countrymen, but the typical American tourist would say, "Yeah, we're going to that church at Reims."
Yeah.
And my friend who introduced me to Joseph Campbell, who had visited Charleston, gone to the Rem Cathedral, I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
To say it, to pronounce it correctly, you have to say something like,
Yeah. You got to roll it.
you got,
Yeah. Jeez.
and he had to get a train ticket.
I don't know if it sounds like that, Tom, but...
Well, I mean, that was my friend trying to pronounce it, but
Yeah.
he couldn't tell the ticket person where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
So he said Reims.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know that,
Totally.
And then he did his best to
Oh,
go.
yeah, here it is.
Reims.
Where is this place, man? Belgium? France. Oh. Yeah,
It's one of the
Paris.
most spectacular cathedrals in the world. I
You've
would
been
say.
there?
Yeah.
Is France cool?
Yeah.
Did you know that's where the restaurant originated?
You mean
Paris, I believe.
The first restaurant?
Yeah,
was-
like the concept of a restaurant. Because they had like eating halls,
Yeah.
but like a restaurant was like you get like a private dining experience.
Yeah.
Where you
Can we
choose
go
from a
back to
menu.
that last slide, please? The last interior, because I wanted to make this point to Servin. Okay. Yeah. That's good.
Stained
So
glass.
this relates to.
Pull that mic up.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
Can still hear you, but yeah.
Yeah.
This relates.
Well, I was pontificating, so I'll
Yeah.
come back
It
in
was
so
good,
I don't
though.
pontificate.
It was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Rem. Chartier. Okay, so what he said was, which is so profound today, but it's also like, you having a certain kind of concern that how could all this be captured in the circle and all that. What he was saying about the hero's journey and using the stained glass as an example of it, a lot of stained glasses will be of the crucifixion of Christ and things like that.
Yeah.
And what he would always say is that these archetypes that we talk about, but these stained glasses, that when you look at a stained glass, it needs to remain transparent to the transcendent truth of it.
Interesting. So what does that mean?
Well, that means that when you literalize a religion, it loses its spiritual power.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that pattern in many different places in life.
Absolutely.
Like even like subcultural stuff. When there's like a particular scene, as I've seen like scenes develop.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you point, maybe like jazz or something. There's these kind of things where it's like when you point at it, it's gone.
Yeah.
If you point at the thing, it's gone.
Right.
And part of participating in a subculture is knowing that.
Yeah.
And you can always tell when there's a tourist in the subculture or the scene because they come in and they're just pointing at the thing and they're like, you don't even see it.
That's right. That's right. Like the Mona Lisa is like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's kind of like this.
Wow. Look at these photos.
Stained glass windows are interesting in general.
Yes. I know. This is.
They have, holy shit. And then the churches use them a lot. I wonder why that is. But it's
Well-
like important to them, these stained glass things.
My brilliant teacher, Jean Houston, used to talk about that. And because she would be talking about the whole hero's journey in terms of the life of Jesus.
Yeah.
And she would say, why do so many of these Christian religions fixate on the crucifixion?
And why do you think that is?
It's only half the story. Well, you can control people through their pain and suffering. And what she would say, kind of humorously, she would say, they've forgotten about the old upsy daisy, meaning they're not talking about the resurrection and what that means. So it gets very complicated, and I don't want to get too much into kind of the variety of religions that are out there.
Yeah.
But the more that a religion will literalize something, the more it will tend to move into heinous acts. Like the Inquisition.
What's the Inquisition?
So the Inquisition was when the Catholic Church decided that they were going to punish anyone, specifically women, who were doing something that was outside of the church's view of humanity. So, for example, if a woman...
How does that happen?
How does it happen?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Keep saying. If a woman is growing herbs for healing, then she was branded a witch. It's still happening it still happens today. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But so if women were healers, then they could be literally burned at the stake for that. Damn. So all of that is like it basically is the fear of the power of the feminine. And for thousands of years, hierarchical, patriarchal governments have been trying to control that power that they... How do people get scared of stuff like that? Like, how does that happen?
Well, because they can't control it. They have no control over it. And if they're even like, if a medical scientist is saying that's not science. So, I mean, for example, I've studied Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
And why not look at the body in terms of its energy fields? Mm-hmm. Because it's not scientific? Why not look at the disease of when the qi gets blocked in certain areas, from stress or fear or kind of things like that? So duality leads to the end of civilizations, and this duality between Eastern and Western medicine is ludicrous because even in China now, they bridge the gap, they integrate the two. They can do surgeries in China using acupuncture instead of anesthetics.
I feel like Chinese medical culture would be like really interesting.
It's fascinating.
Because like they're building on top of this like Asian medicine culture, but then at the same time they've become such a futuristic place.
Yeah.
Right? And that doesn't seem like a culture that would just throw away their kind of like historical beliefs like that,
Yeah, and when you think about it, the body then has a micro and a macro. The body is, who we are physiologically, maybe bringing consciousness, chi, different kind of perspectives on it, but it's all about the oneness of nature. The body is a universe in itself, which we know it is, with billions of cells. I mean, fortunately, we don't wake up in the morning and have to give orders, to our respiratory system, our circulatory system. I mean, your urinary tract system might say, lay off the coffee, buddy. We're getting a little hot down here. So, all that to say that these are like kind of lens. The hero's journey is kind of a lens to view our experience on this planet. But when you start to, I'd be curious what Wikipedia has to say about
Chinese medicine.
Yeah, or alternative medicine.
I actually wanted to look something up.
Yeah, sure.
Robbie, on Claude. So if you look up, ask it. How have ancient Chinese medicine practices, how are they being integrated into the modern Chinese world with their futuristic technology and approaches to medicine?
Great question.
Yeah, that's good. Let's see. Sometimes these LLMs are wrong, so we kind of got to like use our own.
I get it.
Traditional Chinese medicine has deep historical roots stretching back over 2,000 years, developing through centuries of developing through centuries
Centuries.
of empirical observation and philosophical frameworks. At its core, TCM operates on principles that view the body as an interconnected system where health depends on the balance of opposing forces, yin and yang. The smooth flow of vital energy, qi, through pathways called meridians. I always like that word.
Me too.
The holistic approach encompasses diagnosis through methods like pulse reading, tongue examination, and symptom inquiry with treatments including herbal medicine, acupuncture, massage, dietary therapy, and movement practices like Qigong. Modern integration in China represents a unique global model where the Chinese government has implemented a policy of equal importance. Wow.
Yeah.
Equal importance to TCM and Western medicine. That's fucking awesome.
I know.
As part of a long-term national health policy since the early 1950s. This integration has reached remarkable scale. TCM healthcare institutions provided diagnosis, and this would be a good documentary.
For sure.
TCM healthcare institutions provided diagnosis and treatment to an estimated 1.28 billion people. Holy. Across China in 2023, and over 40% of outpatient visits involve TCM treatments. Holy shit.
I know.
That's crazy. Can you go up? What does that say? Healthcare infrastructure. About 90% of general hospitals and 75% of health centers have TCM departments. 90% of general hospitals. Many hospitals and clinics integrate TCM alongside conventional Western medicine, creating a dual-track system where patients can access both approaches. The government actively promotes TCM as a complement to modern medicine, funding research and integrating it into public insurance schemes. Fuck it, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
The integration of TCM with modern medicine is driven by technological advancements in big data and AI, providing unprecedented insights into the mechanisms and efficacy of TCM treatments. AI is being used to enhance diagnostic accuracy through complex pattern recognition in TCM. So they're using technology to, get better at TCM as well.
Absolutely.
China has integrated ancient medicine with cutting-edge technology in several key ways. AI-enhanced diagnosis, machine learning analysis, tongue photos, and pulse patterns. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you're getting like computers to do the traditional Chinese medicine, which is pretty neat. Computer vision reads traditional diagnostic markers with high accuracy. AI recommends personalized herbal formulas based on TCM principles. That's awesome. Digital meridian mapping. Electronic acupuncture devices measure skin conductance at acupoints. 3D body scanning identifies optimal needle placement. Wearable devices track chi flow patterns. Smart herbal medicine. Robotic pharmacies dispense precise herbal combinations. QR codes verify herb authenticity and sourcing. Apps provide dosing guidance based on individual constitution. If it's true that 90% of their general hospitals have a TCM department, their infrastructure around delivering that must be fucking crazy. Remote TCM consultation use smartphone cameras for tongue and pulse analysis. Hospital information systems combine Western lab results with TCM assessments. Genomic studies identifies how herbal compounds affect gene expression. fMRI imaging maps brain changes during acupuncture. Big data analytics validate traditional diagnostic patterns. Damn.
Yeah. And
That's crazy.
It's all available. That could happen here. That can happen in the US. But wonder why it isn't.
Yeah. I think it's just a cultural thing, right? It's a cultural thing. It's you gotta hit a threshold, right? You gotta hit another threshold, right? Then you gotta hit a new threshold where you look at something and you say collectively, like, hey, this has to change. There needs to be some kind of like call, right? And yeah, it seems like the world is moving in a direction where some kind of call is emerging. That's what it feels like to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And,
we'll get into that when we talk about the heroine's journey, but there is, I would just say in general that this is really about the death of the old order, the old way of patriarchal chauvinism and suppressing what Jung would call the feminine.
Yeah.
Healing powers, intuition, empathy. I'm just going to jump ahead for a minute because in the world of neuroscience, I've been working for this organization these organizations are under the umbrella of what, after I gave a talk at this conference, this wonderful fellow gave me this card and it said, the Center for Compassion and Social Justice. And I felt like I had just been giving a ticket to heaven just around, that's why I'm involved in stories and movies and so on. And so on an archetypal level in the U.S., because I won't talk about Canada, but on an archetypal level, it's like this level of patriarchal, hierarchical control has reached its peak.
You're saying we've hit the limit of the existing design.
Yeah. Well said. I like that. Yeah.
We've hit the limit of like how society is designed in its current form.
Yeah, and this is something that maybe could be thousands of years old.
Like, what do you mean? Like we've been hitting it for 1,000 years?
Well, that patriarchal societies, patriarchal hierarchical societies have been kind of ruling it, in a way that it oppresses anything that maybe can't be described as science. Mm-hmm. So what's happening right now is that if you're living in America for the most part, and all the funding, millions of people won't have insurance. There's all the medical funding has been canceled. Anything that involves DEI has been canceled, and it's already impacting the media and so on. So it's a very kind of like, I don't know if you know the Fritz Lang movie Metropolis, but it's very much like what's happening now is there's this like overworld, and then all the workers are underneath, and it's being controlled. It's a duality of the powerful and those that don't have power. The thing is that that's something that can't last. It's going to self-destruct, because the Chinese model we were just talking about is a model that is connected to the earth and how nature flows, how nature functions. Tai Chi and Qigong is all based on studying nature.
Yeah.
So in the West, because we went from an industrialized society to now a society that's really kind of, based on computer technology and apps and so on, that we've separated from the feminine, we've separated from the planet. It's like, how many people do you think would be able to admit that they are actually mammals?
I mean, I definitely can.
You could relate to being a mammal, or you can't?
I think so. I'm some kind of mammal.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And a very unique one, I have to
Thanks,
say.
man.
You're about the most unique mammal I've ever met. That's what I really admire about you. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And then people say, "Why do you like Vinny so much?" I would say, "Well, because he's mammalian."
Why? What do you mean that people wouldn't admit they're a mammal, though?
Well, because they think they're a higher level of consciousness.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
They're not subject to the system.
Right.
There's something beyond it.
Yeah, and then it leads to autocracy. Like when power gets more and more concentrated, it leads to autocracy and dictators and so on. And it's almost like surreal, unbelievable what's happening. But as you were alluding to earlier, what most people that are conscious, or at least feel like this is one system that we're living in, this one natural system, there's no boundaries. I feel like that there's a new consciousness that's being born right now. But it's not a revision of these hierarchical, patriarchal governments of the past, because hierarchies don't function, they don't work. You see that in nature. That old way of being is going to die. It's not going to be transformed, but what we're going to be experiencing is a metamorphosis. You know, in kind of the terms that came up during the pandemic, it's a kind of spiritual immunity to oppressive patriarchal regimes. And it's something that's not, it's not from one day to the next going to change. It's something that's already changing. And you could see, because there are certain Christian churches that are at war with the feminine. So far, they're not burning female healers, but they're actually writing books about how empathy is anti-Christian.
Damn, that's crazy. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, but you see it happening every day. You know, they're kidnapping kids. And
damn.
Yeah. So
where is that? What is that?
There are certain fundamentalist evangelical.
Where is that happening? Like where in the world?
Where are the kids being kidnapped?
Yeah.
Well, all over the United States.
Oh,
you
really?
know, ICE. They have a Gestapo called ICE, and people don't even know where these men and women came from. And they're going to car washes. They went to a marijuana farm in Southern California. You know, there's a war against California right now.
Yeah.
And they're literally just stealing these people off the streets or from parks. You know, there's festivals, they're pulling them out. Car washes where undocumented folks might be working, and they're taking them to a place that nobody knows. It's an unknown place. So there's no rule of law.
You're referring to like this, them picking up like these undocumented workers?
Yeah, and they're not all undocumented. They've picked up like American citizens who've been in Iraq just because of the color of their skin.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
damn.
Now the huge challenge is, though, it's so easy.
It? These ICE agents.
Yeah, take a look.
Let's like read this.
Yeah, take a look.
What is an ICE agent? Immigration something?
Yeah, you know, it's...
Let's see. What's the headline? ICE raids and Medicaid cuts are bad news for California's immigrants. States cuts could be much worse. Okay. Army veteran and U.S. citizen arrested in California immigration raid. Warns it could happen to anyone. Is there any info on like what is happening here? Like George Ratis, 25, who worked as a security guard, Glass House Farms in Camarillo, said he was arriving at work on July 10th when several federal agents surrounded his car, and despite him identifying himself as a U.S. citizen, broke his window, pepper sprayed him, and dragged him out. Damn.
Yeah, it's a Gestapo.
Massive farm raids led to hundreds being detained. The Ventura City native was detained during chaotic raids at 2 Southern California farms, where federal authorities arrested more than 360 people, one of the largest operations since President Donald Trump took office in January. Protesters faced off against federal agents in military-style gear.
Yeah.
And one farm worker died after falling from a greenhouse roof. The raids came more than a month into an extended immigration crackdown by the Trump administration across Southern California that was originally centered in Los Angeles, where local officials say the federal actions are spreading fear in immigrant communities. Damn. You got someone dropped 30 feet because they were scared to death and lost their life. People are quite literally disappearing with no due process, no rights. Damn. Oh, this is a video? Let's see this. Is there audio on this? LA Park, MacArthur Park.
Oh, my bad.
You know this park, Tom?
Yeah, sure.
MacArthur?
Yeah, absolutely.
Damn, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What's this? Oh, yeah. Federal agents in armored vehicles by MacArthur Park. Where's MacArthur Park?
It's right in the heart of Los Angeles.
You turn it up a bit, Robbie? It disappeared. It says picture in picture.
Oh,
I think I have to refresh. There we go.
My bad.
Holy shit.
I know.
Holy shit. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a crazy time to be in LA.
Yeah. Well,
Senate approves
it's not any different
unprecedented
than
spending.
1936 Berlin.
Like the fall of the Berlin Wall?
No, like
No,
the
that was 1950s,
the
right?
Kristallnacht when Jews from all over the city were rounded up and then eventually herded and brought into concentration camps.
Fuck.
So
what does this have to do with the feminine?
Well, here's the challenge.
You have that heroine's journey, right?
Yeah. There
I
it
think there
is.
was another one you had. Yeah, this one.
That one's not bad. Yeah. Okay.
So what does this whole thing have to do with the feminine? This whole thing.
So
This like change in the world, this like geopolitical change, all this stuff. Like what does this have to do? You clearly have some kind of theory here.
yes, I would say that I'll kind of go through the stages, but kind of in the big picture, the power of the feminine is so strong that it's been oppressed for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's like, men can't have children. But the kind of fear of anything that has to do with consciousness, like healing power, like healing through a resonance a field of resonance in a constellation, all of that seems to be like witchcraft for the type of people that have not gone on a hero's journey or a heroine's journey, but also of people that identify with controlling through force. Mm-hmm. You see it all over the world now. In Israel, you see it in Russia, you see it in the U.S. And as I've been saying, it marks the end of this old order. But the idea of the heroine's journey is different than the hero's journey because it's different for a woman to come of age, for example, and go through different rites of passages. Mm-hmm. And so in general, and how it relates to what's going on in the world today, that for a woman to be successful in this patriarchal world, they tend to kind of separate from the feminine and put on their masculine uniforms and costumes to be successful in that world. Mm-hmm. So it's like, a lot of times it's like a daddy's girl will do that, mm-hmm. but through the daddy's eyes, we'll see the mother as being kind of weak and neurotic and all these mm-hmm. projections out. So this happens to artists too. It's not just women. Anybody that is empathic or intuitive, mm-hmm. artists, women, and so on. But what happens is no matter how successful you become in the outer materialistic world, there's an emptiness that starts within. Mm-hmm. And no matter how successful it is or how many millions you've made or what position in government you have or where there's like an empty hole inside. And in a certain point, a woman or an artist will kind of get swallowed into that hole and go into a state of total uncertainty. And so the heroine's journey is about reconnecting with the feminine. It's reconnecting with the earth. It's reconnecting with nature and what we know about nature. And the way that that works is when you're in the patriarchal, materialistic world, being more and more successful and all that, and you start to feel this kind of vacuous space inside, at a certain point you can't continue like that in the outer world, and you have to retreat. And the whole idea of the heroine's journey is you retreat. It's a journey to find your true voice, the true voice of who you are. And in the journey with with all the twists and turns that happen, as you're kind of moving through, you get to kind of a certain point where by letting go, you find your tribe. And your tribe is that group of, we can say it could be women or a group of supportive people that allow you to express the truth of who you really are without recrimination. Mm-hmm. And that's the initiation. And so the main difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey is that in the heroine's journey, the initiation is in community. It's in constellation, as we talked about before. It's in connection to the earth. Mm-hmm. And so with that, then the heroine, male or female, is then kind of empowered to go back to the waking world. And if you want to get into some of these... These
I don't know if you would word it this way, but it's interesting. Separation from the feminine goes into identification with masculine, gathering of allies, road of trials to meet ogres and dragons, finding the boon of success. Very similar to what you're saying.
That's right.
Awakening to feeling and spirituality, death. This idea that the success is not serving you. There's still something missing.
Exactly.
Initiation and descent to the goddess?
Yeah, to the truth from your soul.
Some deeper truth. Yeah. Urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. The feminine is, you're kind of like who you are on some fundamental level.
Yeah, and then the feminine is all your inner energies.
Healing the mother-daughter split. So this would be healing the original reason why you
That's right. And that comes through community. That comes through expressing the voice that you gave up to be successful in the patriarchal world. And so there's this separation from the deeper feminine, from the earth wisdom, from the body wisdom, that creates that space inside, because that's not who you really are. You're playing a game, you're wearing a costume to have a certain level of success to impress your parents or whatever you're doing. And then at a certain point, when you've lost everything and you've completely let go, you start to find this community where you can be yourself and express yourself, and that's healing the mother-daughter split. Mm-hmm. So for a woman, it would be a community of women in support who've been on the journey already, who are there in support. So once you kind of go through that whole kind of experience, the journey's not over, because you have to heal your masculine side also. Mm-hmm. And what Maureen Murdoch, who wrote the brilliant book, The Heroine's Journey, says that the journey is not over until you meet what she calls the man with heart.
Yeah, so what's that?
It's a man ruled by his heart rather than his mind. And it's a man that has integrated his masculine and feminine. These are all Jungian terms, and in fact, they point to a certain kind of dualism that doesn't actually exist. But just for the sake of conversation, it's like, how then can you be in the waking world or the day world of society with a balanced masculine outer and feminine inner world? So you could almost say that the heroine's journey begins when the hero's journey ends.
Yeah.
And how it relates to us today is the way I see it, at least, that change is going to happen through communities changing. Change has to happen in the family first, and then it happens in the communities. But as communities become more open to the unseen powers in the world and start to, in a sense, learn how to communicate in a safe way with each other. I mean, people are, anybody that has any position that's in opposition to the current administration is really getting neutralized. So Stephen Colbert, who had the most popular, evening show, has been they're canceling the show now.
Wow.
And the Trump administration is like reveling in the fact of how successfully they've gotten rid of their opponents and so on. And he's a very brilliant man who has a integrated masculine and feminine side, Steve Colbert.
Yeah.
So with this heroine's journey now, I actually feel like this is what's happening in the world, and this is the change that needs to happen. But like I said before, it's not about revising the old world. It's not about trying to revise the American government. It's not a transformation, it's a metamorphosis. That's going to end, and I think the chaos that's being created, because it is self-destructing, is that people are in total fear of moving into chaos. Because chaos is scary, although chaos is what precedes every major creative change and advancement. So what kind of keeps me going is, one, not listening to newscasts, but also knowing that there's so many people that I'm connected with, like you, that explore what their soul is, that follow their intuition. I mean, you follow your intuition and gut feelings all the time. You're not on you're not on a regular path.
No, I don't
You're
think
on a path of exploration. You're kind of the miner that goes down into the,
totally
into the mountains of Canada and the rivers.
It's been
finding
a while
what
to
gold.
figure out. It's been a while to figure out how to survive and like live in that way. But
it's very, very difficult and challenging.
But I basically worked out that I basically had no choice.
Yeah.
Because it was like very obvious to me, and I have lived many different lives and been different people, and it's like pushed to the razor's edge of different lives.
That's right.
And so I just learned that functionally it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I feel like this heroine's journey, I can definitely relate to it. I've gone down this path. I've gone through this cycle before. I don't know if these words, when I hear the words like feminine and masculine, for me, it's tough to know exactly what those mean, because they mean specific things. But I can say that I have gone down the path of trying to be somebody else, because I thought that was like the correct thing to do.
Right.
And then realizing that this is not who I am, and, having to discover like what matters to me. And I've always been like a very, very, very curious person. And I would always freak out on things. Like now my friends know that I get like super excited about specific things, a specific food item. Or, I get really into things. It's just like something people know and they appreciate me. It's something that they appreciate about me. But when I was younger, I would actually hide that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would hide this. Maybe when I was a kid I didn't, but there was identities that I've adopted where I've like hidden that part of myself and like kind of like told myself it's like not good. And it took a while to realize that people would tell me like, oh, you're overthinking. I would hear that a lot. You're overthinking. And as I got older, what I realized was a lot of people that told me that I was overthinking are not thinking enough. You know what I mean? And that was like a big eye-opening thing, is that actually like you're actually not thinking enough, because you're not aware of like there's so many amazing things. There's so many things to be appreciative for. There's so many different angles. There's so many cultures that you can learn from.
Yes.
You can learn from every single person's culture. And if you don't believe that, you're just an idiot. You're just an idiot. Because every single person's culture, even if it's like different than yours, there's unique aspects of it. If you eat their food, you can learn things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you understand the language, the way there's things you can take from them.
Yeah.
And you can improve as a person if you do. And so, yeah, I'm very happy about that. Like and I think making documentaries helped me go through this process.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Because it made me, making documentaries was the catalyst actually for me to realize that all these things about myself that are maybe like sensitive or like curious or whatever are actually extremely useful.
Right.
Because in documentaries and any creative project, they saved me like all the time, you know, the idea that, oh, I could use some thing that I was very sensitive about, some person that I really thought was amazing, the ability, or asking someone a question and being able to like pull something out of it was useful.
Sure.
Because just me asking somebody questions, when we'd get to the edit, it was like, oh man, great thing Vin asked all these questions, because now we have like material to work with.
Exactly.
Right? Oh, that random thing that Vin was interested in during the conversation. It's like, damn, good thing he asked that, because now we have this other tangent we can explore. And so it became this, like, making documentaries for me became this very validating aspect of this idea, this sensitivity that I have is like very useful. And then I started to believe it increased my confidence. And I believe that I could use this like sensitivity in other ways. Could I use it to make great software? Could I use it to learn like, could I learn like architecture in some way? Could I make even different kinds of films? What are the different mediums I can go in and out of? Can I use this sensitivity to walk into a restaurant and like, you know, if I eat a meal, can I understand what the chef is trying to do here? Can I understand like maybe a chip on his shoulder he had that maybe he was frustrated with the other food and he decided to like make this, you know? Can I taste that in the food? Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think that sensitivity, the idea that you can learn from anybody, it's just so intrinsic to who I am.
Absolutely. And, you know, I have, after writing and teaching and consulting in many different countries around the world and working with hundreds of artists, I've really come to realize, and this is, I believe, you know, kind of in your DNA, it's not knowing how to do it. It's not about how good you are or think you are, who you know or what you know. It's knowing how to it's knowing how to ask the right questions. And for me, all of storytelling is really about that. Just because as soon as you raise a question, it's a quest. So our amazing time together, it's like, it starts with questions. It starts the quest. And then you go on that journey, not because we know where we're going, but because we know what to ask. And that's very much an intuitive thing. And I also wanted to just address for a minute this idea of masculine and feminine, because it makes it incredibly difficult to explain the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, because they use these Jungian terms. And now that gender has been so politicized, there's a tendency to stereotype, oh, heroine's journey is just about women, or, you know, Superwoman's a heroine's journey. Well, actually, it's not. It's a hero's journey. It doesn't fit into the heroine's journey pattern. So I think that I now feel more comfortable using the terminology of yin and yang. Yeah. Because, you know, in the symbol, they're one.
Yeah. It's like the best symbol ever, by the way. But I feel like it's been so played out that like people don't appreciate like how ridiculously good that like is from like a graphic design perspective. Like it's actually insane.
It is.
Like go to that first thing. Like this is insane, man. It's like crazy. Like
yeah.
And I think it's just so played out that people don't appreciate how like awesome it is. But yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the ideas that came out of the 60s, which actually for me and a lot of people were the 70s, you know, were then satirized. And then, you know, peace, brother, you know, the peace symbol everything was kind of satirized at a certain point because people were afraid to to really go on that journey into their bodies and, being one with the earth and, realizing that, we're just on this ball of dirt.
Yeah, floating through the space.
In the middle of nowhere. You might as well go for the ride, but trying to control it.
Totally.
It creates great conflict. But yeah, I think it is one of the most beautiful symbols ever. And so that's kind of, it's like the heroine's journey is more yang than yin. The heroine's journey is more yin than yang, but they're still part of that whole.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think we should wrap on this.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, because we don't want to, yeah.
Did you want to touch on anything else?
I
think there's one more thing, or?
Well, I'd like to just go back to where we started in terms of how we perceive the world.
Yes. What was the starting point?
Because the starting point was most people perceive the world as a duality, and we look through a dualistic lens. So
yeah, most people, you're on one side or the other.
Yeah. And I think that the new awareness that's being born is that when more and more people start to open up from that view of that dualistic point of view into a view that's more quantum, it's so much more relaxing to know that, we're in this constellation, this field of resonance in this constellation, rather than it's us trying to make things happen. I think Alan Watts said it's like, most people feel like they're a bag of flesh surrounding an ego.
Yeah.
So I think this is all part of the earth wisdom that's unfolding. But the biggest challenge is not to go, there has to be resistance, but not to turn this into, we have to stop what's happening with this neo-fascism around the world. We have to stop it, because the way that change happens, and it also is the whole basis of Aikido, is that when somebody attacks you, like people are being attacked all over this country, Russia, in Gaza and so on, that it's not about blocking and punching like in karate. When you get attacked in Aikido, and it's all based on how nature functions, like Tai Chi and Qigong are, but when you're getting attacked, you move to the side and you use their power and energy to subdue them. Mm-hmm. So that's what I feel is happening now. Yes, there has to be resistance, because we can't just kind of lay over and play dead. But I think that on, this, whether you want to call it yin or the feminine or intuition or gut feelings, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that this is something that the more that we kind of drop into that on a community level, that's going to create a vision for the new world, which, as I said, isn't a revision of the old world.
Yeah.
So I think the most significant thing is to realize when we're looking at the world through the dualistic lens, and relax and open up and then shift more into the quantum. I do this every day when I get upset about things or afraid of things.
Quantum can also be like your body.
Yeah, it's the whole,
the idea that you're connected to everything around you.
Yeah.
And that's like the truth of it.
It is. And we know that from quantum physics.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, Tom.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for always helping me out. Thank you for teaching me so much about storytelling. Hope we can keep chatting. And it's always really interesting to hear your perspectives on things, man. Thank you for everything.
You're so welcome. And every time we've met, it's been meaningful. It really has. It really has. And yeah, it's been some time since we've seen each other, but then it feels like no time in a way.
Yeah, I think last time I was with you, we were walking on a beach or something, and you were like, just look at the ocean. Just look at the ocean, man. Thanks, man. Thank you for everything.
All right. Be well.
There we go, man. We did it.